Chapter 743. For a moment, the ground shook incessantly. All the students thought there was a major earthquake, and they ran out of the military tent to check on the situation. The complex array patterns and talisman characters on the ground spread out like vipers, startling many of the students who scuttled up trees like monkeys. Teacher, what is this? A lead teacher was directing order. Don't panic, everyone. These are the array patterns and talisman characters of an array. They look scary, but they're harmless to the body. On the other side, Wu Zhenjuan, who had been in charge of the preliminary interrogation of President Dylan and the others, as well as dozens of teachers who had been involved in the operation plan, came out of the military tent one after another. All of them had very ugly expressions on their faces. Who would have thought that something like this would still happen in the end? Wu Zhenjuan crouched down and carefully analyzed the array patterns and talisman characters under his feet. Senior Immortal, what kind of array is this? A lead teacher asked. This is the Sea and Sky Array, also known as the 100Li Sea and Sky Array. It's the highest grade 7 transmission array. Wu Zhenjuan frowned. Generally speaking, to set up this kind of array, you need to set it up at least half a month in advance within a radius of 100 li, and then link it up in a line. But the remains have only just opened, so it's clearly impossible to set it up in advance, so this 100 li Sea and Sky Array is an instant one. Many of the lead teachers were enlightened. As the chief commander of the teachers appointed by Huaxiu Alliance this time, it could only be said that Wu Zhenjuan was in the end Wu Zhenjuan. In just a few words, he had completely analyzed the current situation. Furthermore, Wu Zhenjuan could already tell that the person who had summoned the array definitely had the rumored magic crystal. This was a new type of technology that had yet to be clearly announced in various countries. It could seal high-level spells in crystals, and when necessary, they could be crushed to instantly cast spells. On the side, Wang Ling also followed a group of students up the tree. Although he wasn't afraid of the magic array under his feet, he still chose to go with the flow. This was the reaction a normal foundation establishment student should have, otherwise it would definitely look very strange. The truth was that he had been observing the movements in the military tent the whole time. The moment Ghost Head Blade took out the magic crystal, Wang Ling had already guessed that something bad was going to happen. Of all the dark forces they had come into contact with so far, it could only be said that Night Chief was indeed the greatest threat. That was because Night Chief was a foreign power to begin with. Even Huaxiu Nation's officials were unable to directly root out this organization. Even if this group of members was overthrown at home, as long as their overseas headquarters still existed, Night Chief would still be able to get away with it. Thus, it would be best if this incident could attract the attention of the International Cultivation Police Department. Now that Night Chief was planning to make a move on the students, this was the best reason to report it to the International Cultivation Police Department. But Wang Ling didn't plan to make a move, because there were enough teachers present to ensure the students' safety. These teachers were all top-notch experts. Moreover, among this group of experts, there was an important figure hidden behind them. Wang Ling's gaze fell indifferently on a middle-aged man not far away. He knew. This lord was about to make his move. At the same time, Huaxiu Alliance's headquarters was also alarmed by this situation. 100 secrets and one careless mistake. President Qi put both hands on the table, leaving a deep palm print on it. He could no longer maintain his composure at the scene in front of him. He actually possesses a magic crystal. The other 10 great generals, who were standing beside them, were shocked as well. It would not be an exaggeration to say that Ghost Head Blade bringing out this magic crystal was something that no one had anticipated. President Qi made an emergency response. The moment he discovered that the Sea and Sky Array had been activated, he immediately ordered General Bai to join forces with the Songhai Mahjong Squad and Huaxiu Alliance cultivators to set up a protective barrier. On the other side, he would remotely mobilize the Heavenly E satellite to launch a Heavenly E bomb in space to wipe out the summoned Cell army in one go. The Heavenly E bomb was extremely powerful, but General Bai was on the fake remains. As long as the barrier was set up, casualties and losses in the fake remains could be minimized. Even if Huaxiu Alliance cultivators were affected by the Heavenly E bomb, it would at least be a lot better than if the students were hurt. There was nothing he could do about it. How long until the Heavenly E satellite is activated? President Chi asked anxiously, his cheeks already drenched in cold sweat. Lord President, the Heavenly E satellite is still in the charging stage, and will need another 5 minutes. But the Sea and Sky Array will be activated smoothly in another minute. A technician said. So fast? General E was astonished. President Chi frowned deeply. The spells sealed in the magic crystal are all built-in spells that have already been set up. Whenever they're used, they're cast instantly. It looks like it's already too late. Lord President, what should we do now? The technician asked. 1. Immediately inform the Special Operations Team led by Chua to cooperate with the lead teachers to evacuate the students. 2. Request His Excellency the Head of State to make a move. It would be best if he could destroy this Sea and Sky Array and interrupt the transmission. President Chi said resolutely. But this would be extremely difficult. The Sea and Sky Array was the most powerful level 7 spell array, and also the most difficult to destroy. Because it covered such a huge area, finding the core array pattern was like looking for a needle in a haystack. Even the head of state might not be able to find it. But now, it seemed that there was no other way. Chua soon received news from President Chi. Because most of the troops were stationed deep in the forest, they had been searching for them for a long time. Now that they were almost there, they hadn't expected a new unforeseen event. Now, the whole forest was like a bouncing trampoline as every inch of the ground shook. Fatty Luo jumped up and down along with the vibrations. The dark sect this time is probably richer than Immortal Mansion. They've even revealed their undisclosed technology first. Don't tell me they have their own research team behind them. This is a rebellion. Chua sighed. This was a classic case of not being afraid of fighting with hooligans, but afraid of hooligans being cultured. Watching Fatty Luo jump around, Little Silver felt a little bad in his heart. Mr. Luo, please stop jumping. Are you dancing on shit? Fatty Luo, Chua. Now isn't the time to joke around. We have to think of a way to protect the children first. What's the plan? Fatty Luo asked. Chua cupped his chin in his hand and thought for a bit, then he gazed at the bandaged girl next to him. Wuji, can you move the entire array? Wuji shook her head. Do you want me to die of exhaustion? It's very tiring to move such a large array. No way, no way. At that moment, Chua took out a ring and smiled at Wuji. Wuji, I advise you to be kind. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal gave me 5 of the 10 flames of purification previously. Could he still give this thing away? Wuji's face instantly changed. Yes, Master, I'll go right away. Chapter 744. This was an instantaneous Sea and Sky Array, and it was almost impossible to stop it midway. There were only 2 solutions in this situation. 1. Find the core array pattern and destroy the foundation of the Great Array so that it couldn't be stabilized and thus disintegrated. Otherwise, as long as the cell summoning array on the fake remains existed, the summoned cells would be continuously transmitted over. But the Sea and Sky Array was too huge, and the array pattern was extremely complicated. It was almost impossible to find the core array pattern in a short period of time. The second solution was to find a way to move the Sea and Sky Array elsewhere, and then use a large-scale spell to directly destroy it. This seemed to be the most feasible method at the moment. However, it would cause serious damage to the real remains itself. On the fake remains side, Lord Dark Fragrance, who had used the cells at work spell to summon cells, looked at the dozen or so Night Chief members who had already completely withered. Back then, Lord Dark Fragrance had suggested using cells to summon cells to save his life, but this move was extremely harmful to the body, and wasn't just as simple as shortening one's lifespan. The reason why it was said to shorten one's lifespan was completely a stopgap measure. In normal circumstances, summoning 1 or 2 cells to do battle would indeed consume some lifespan, which wasn't a big deal. But for such a large number of white blood cells and red blood cell armies, the problem wasn't as simple as burning lifespan. Under such a powerful summoning spell, all the cells of a person would ultimately be sacrificed, and all the organs in the body would be consumed. Every drop of vital essence in the body would be completely burned away. As the master of the array, Dark Fragrance could naturally control the array to protect himself and be safe. He and Ghosthead Blade had already received a secret order from Night Ghost Spirit Emperor to use this special method in a special situation. This move was very much like throwing caution to the wind, but it also posed a huge problem for Huaxiao Alliance. Because destroying the sea and sky array would damage the real remains no matter what. In the last few years, Huaxiao Nation had been relying on their words to protect Beast King's remains to firmly control the entrance to Devil Valley's secret land. If this sea and sky array was handled improperly now, as long as it caused some international public opinion, other countries would definitely take advantage of the situation and apply to the International United Cultivators Association to jointly manage Devil Valley. That would truly be the point where it would be hard to get off. At this moment, within the range of the sea and sky array in the forest, a large expanse of thick fog rose. This was a sign that the array formation had been activated. Many of the leading teachers began to organize the students to retreat into the rainbow glass box. This was the most important thing to do now. As long as the students retreated, the teachers could fight on their own without having to worry about the consequences. These summoned cells were huge in size, and every single one of them was extremely strong. Even the weakest one was at the gold core stage. Even if the Foundation Establishment stage students joined forces, they would only be sending themselves to their deaths. The head of state stood in the void and looked down at the sea and sky array beneath his feet. This array covered 1/7 of the dense forest in the east. 1/7 of the forest sounded like a small portion, but there were still many extinct resources within. The portion that was open to the students today was just the tip of the iceberg in this dense forest. A small piece of land that was not even 1/7 of the total territory. Destroying the core array pattern was the best way to prevent the remains from being destroyed as much as possible. But this sea and sky array had clearly been specially processed. An array expert could make a big deal out of the structure of the array pattern and set up many fake array patterns to conceal the true core. Furthermore, these fake array patterns were no less complex than the real ones. It was like the fake wires in a bomb. The slightest mistake could set off a chain reaction. Unless they were all destroyed in one go, even the head of state wouldn't dare act rashly. He could see that there was something fishy about these fake array patterns. If he destroyed one by mistake, the fake array patterns would rapidly multiply and spread. Seeing that the students in the forest had been safely pulled back into the rainbow glass box, the head of state heaved a sigh of relief. It was likely that the military tents below would all go to waste this time. The children had been evacuated in such a hurry that there was no time at all to retrieve the tents. Is there any way to lock onto the core? The Huaxiao Alliance Command Center received the head of state's question. President Qi sighed. For the time being, there was nothing he could do. If he had been at the scene, he might have been able to use the brain deduction technique to find the true core array pattern. Because everything in the deduction technique was an illusion of the brain, it wouldn't have the slightest effect even if he destroyed the wrong array pattern. But now, unless he could use the heavenly eye to correctly identify the array pattern, all his hopes now rested on Wang Ming alone. As President Qi's disciple, Wang Ming naturally knew the pros and cons of this matter. They had to find the core array pattern in order to minimize the damage to the remains. In the military tent, Zhai Yin, who had activated Vanguard Blade, was evenly matched with Ghosthead Blade. This was a very difficult opponent. Although Wang Ming had lived with Zhai Yin for less than half a year, their tacit understanding had unknowingly risen to a new level because they had been together day and night. Now wasn't the time for Wang Ming to be trapped in the tent, otherwise his brain deduction technique wouldn't be able to cover the entire sea and sky array at all. After noticing Wang Ming's meaningful glance, Zhai Yin changed his line of attack and deliberately revealed some flaws. Ghosthead Blade's killing intent burst forth as he did his best to kill Zhai Yin first. In the next moment, Ghosthead Blade, which had turned into a small pitch-black blade, smashed heavily into the barrier which he had set up, and it instantly cracked. Zhai Yin borrowed the force of the attack to break the barrier in one go. Success! Zhai Yin cried out excitedly. She stayed by Wang Ming's side and continued to stand guard for him. Almost the instant the barrier was broken, Wang Ming had already sat down cross-legged. He activated the brain deduction technique to the maximum and summoned the heavenly materials sword in an attempt to find the specific location of the core array pattern. At that moment, the army of white blood cells and red blood cells which had been transmitted from the fake remains had already sprung up from the ground like bamboo shoots after a rain. This was undoubtedly a huge obstacle to Wang Ming's search for the core array pattern. There are actually so many of them, many of the teachers who had stayed behind marveled one after another. The students no longer had anything to worry about. Under Wu Zhenjuan's command, they all stayed behind to stand guard for Wang Ming. Once Wang Ming found the core array pattern, they would gather all their firepower to destroy it in one go. However, the number of white blood cells, red blood cells and even macrophages made everyone feel like they were in a sea of people. The number of these summoned cells was too huge. There were actually more than 10,000 of them. Most of the cells didn't have high realms, but because there were so many of them, it was extremely troublesome to deal with them. That Lord Dark fragrance from the fake remains had already been transmitted over through the sea and sky array to meet up with Ghosthead Blade. Brother Dark Fragrance is really skilled. Ghosthead Blade looked at the vast army and praised him from the bottom of his heart. Just a small trick, Dark Fragrance replied. The two of them stood in the distance and watched from a distance. They didn't notice Wang Ling's clone standing not too far away from them, staring at the army of cells with dead fish eyes. Just as all the teachers were discussing telepathically how to split up to face the enemy, in the next moment, something that no one could have imagined happened. The cells which had just emerged actually shrank back. Chapter 745. A tremendous oppressive force descended from the sky and swept over the scene, making it impossible to tell what on earth was going on. Who was it? For a moment, all the teachers leading the team, including Princeps, who was about to attack, were deeply shocked. They could feel that there was a powerful master releasing his domineering aura at an extremely close distance from them. And the most terrifying thing was that this domineering aura actually caused the group of summoned activated cells to shrink back one by one. It could be said that these cells already had a very strong desire to live. Ghosthead Blade and Lord Dark Fragrance also had shocked expressions on their faces. The greatest expert they had locked onto was undoubtedly that lord who had disguised himself as head of State 001. But this spiritual pressure clearly wasn't released by him. At the scene, there was a hidden expert who was out of everyone's expectations. In Huaxiao Alliance's headquarters, the 10 generals present couldn't help getting up one by one as they stared in shock at the scene in front of them. After this spiritual pressure of unknown origin descended, President Qi asked the technicians to immediately activate all the gauges to monitor the data. In the end, all 120 spiritual pressure gauges in all of Huaxiao Alliance were filled to the brim. The needle was directly pushed to its highest peak. Furthermore, more than 10 spiritual pressure gauges couldn't withstand the pressure and exploded in less than a few seconds after they were filled to the brim. President Qi's face turned pale with shock. These spiritual pressure gauges were connected to space satellites and had very strong negative pressure. Furthermore, they were connected in series. Even if the head of state got angry, he could only fill 60 or so gauges at most. But now, not only were these 120 gauges all filled to the brim, more than 10 had exploded. Old Qi, this isn't the first time, right? Dressed in his exercise clothes, General Yi floated in the air and pinched his mustache as he looked solemnly at the scene in front of him. Next to him, the other 10 generals, including Marshal Jiang, also had puzzled expressions on their faces. Everyone's hearts were as clear as a mirror. Because this wasn't the first time this had happened. The most recent time, during the joint military training exercise for the 6 schools back then, there had been a situation where all the spiritual pressure gauges had been filled to the brim and then exploded. At that time, President Qi had been the one directing it from behind the scenes. Everyone had thought that the gauges had malfunctioned, so they hadn't paid too much attention to it. However, after the maintenance, the technicians in charge of maintenance said that there were no problems with the instrument, and that it was a normal phenomenon caused by the overload of spiritual pressure. At that time, this had become an unsolved case with many suspicious points. This was because General E was the only one of the 10 generals who had been sent to participate in the joint military training exercise for the 6 schools, and his limit was 40 spans. The old devil, who had yet to reach his prime, was about 20 years old. Therefore, even if the two of them were fighting at that time, it was impossible for all the spiritual pressure gauges to be filled up. As expected, has that mysterious expert shown up again? President Xi frowned deeply. Including the time during the military training for the 6 schools, this should already be the 3rd time this had happened. The earliest time was when the gate between worlds had descended 6 years ago, around the time that the sky-swallowing toad had been defeated, and there had been a peak in spiritual pressure. The whole of Huaxiao Alliance took the mysterious expert's attacks very seriously. But to everyone's surprise this time, including President Xi's, no one had expected this mysterious expert to actually be among the summer camp's lineups. This person has attacked us again and again in secret, so he probably isn't willing to show his face. But this just happens to expose his identity. General E said. After the summer camp is over, you can make a list of all the teachers involved in this operation, and we'll investigate them one by one. General Yi's first instinct was that this mysterious expert was among the teachers. Because all the students had already been withdrawn into the rainbow glass box at the scene, the teachers leading the team were undoubtedly the most suspicious. President Xi nodded. Looking at the current situation, this person has attacked us again and again, so he should be a friend and not a foe. But he's hiding in the dark and we can't control him. That's absolutely out of the question. There were still a few days left in the summer camp. Since it had already been proven that this mysterious expert was among them, this was undoubtedly the best time to ferret him out. Because the head of state was with them this time, if the head of state was allowed to test the waters, no matter how powerful that expert was, he would definitely give himself away. It was just that they would never have thought. The mysterious expert, who could cause more than 120 spiritual pressure gauges to be filled up, was just one of Wang Ling's clones. Wang Ling had promised the Heavenly Tao that he wouldn't take the initiative to make a move, but after seeing the sea and sky array, he had second thoughts. Right now, he probably wasn't taking the initiative to make a move, he had been forced to defend himself. Besides, he was really keeping a low profile this time. He had just had his clone force the summoned cell army back, which shouldn't be too excessive. On the other side, under the protection of Zhai Yin and the many teachers, Wang Ming's brain worked at lightning speed as he used the brain deduction technique to search for the core array pattern. Sitting cross-legged on the ground, his whole body flushed red because his brain was working at high speed. Blue veins popped out on his forehead as they pulsed, which was a ghastly sight to behold. Zhai Yin even wondered if Wang Ming's head would instantly burst like a balloon filled with air at the slightest touch. Since the cells summoned by Ghost Head Blade had been scared back by Wang Ling's clone, the pressure on the teachers leading the team was a lot less. They kept a close eye on Ghost Head Blade and Dark Fragrance, who weren't far away. Dark Fragrance was remotely controlling the summoning array, and had activated the death-defying mode, intending to make a comeback. Just at that moment, Wang Ming opened his eyes. Found it. Seeing this, the head of state immediately pointed through the air and synchronized Wang Ming's memories with the minds of all the teachers leading the team. Everyone, attack. Gather all your firepower. Smash the core array pattern. In an instant, more than 10 teachers rushed out. Following the coordinates in Wang Ming's mind, they successfully found the location of the core array pattern. Boom 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 boom, endless light cannons and light waves shot out from the teachers' palms and magic weapons as they fired wildly at the core array pattern, sparing no effort. Want to destroy the array pattern? It won't be that easy. Ghost Head Blade was furious. Wang Ming had been completely surrounded by the iron bucket array just now, and Ghost Head Blade hadn't been able to find a chance to attack him at all. Now that most of the people had been sent out to attack the core array pattern, Ghost Head Blade knew his chance had come. He manipulated the pitch-black blade that he had transformed into to directly burrow into the ground, intending to launch a surprise attack from underground. Chapter 746. It was only in that moment that Ghosthead Blade realized that the soil in the real remains wasn't ordinary soil. He had directly touched it with his metal body, and his body had almost been corroded. Fortunately, he had reacted quickly, otherwise he would have been seriously injured if he had been underground for a few more seconds. After learning that the soil was corrosive, Ghosthead Blade immediately changed his mind and tried to launch another attack on Wang Ming. Wang Ming was now in a very dangerous situation. Because he had used up too much energy using the brain deduction technique earlier, he was now in a weak state. This state was a little like anemia, where his qi and blood were weak due to insufficient blood supply to his brain. He was sweating all over and his heart was racing. It was like a person who had suddenly stopped running at full speed, and Wang Ming felt uncomfortable all over. He was doing his best to adjust his breathing and control his heart rate. In this situation, a normal qi replenishing elixir wouldn't have much of an effect on him, because this was an injury caused by his mental strength. Brother Dark Fragrance, cover me. At that moment, Night Chief's forces had completely collapsed, and the only people who could salvage the situation were Ghosthead Blade and this Lord Dark Fragrance. Both of them were extremely difficult to deal with among Dark Network members. Sensing the killing intent, Zhai Yin immediately set up an army knife formation next to Wang Ming. Cell Proliferation Spell. Lord Dark Fragrance's hands formed a seal, and a white cyst-like substance immediately emerged on Ghosthead Saber's pitch-black blade. These cyst-like substances rapidly multiplied on Ghosthead Saber's body like bacteria, continuously replicating themselves, unexpectedly forming an extremely tough and resilient cell armor that could continuously regenerate. Ghosthead Blade didn't need to worry about anything else at all, he just needed to charge forward. His target was Wang Ming. The head of state's heart sank at this scene. He stretched out his hand to block the attack, but in the next moment, Lord Dark Fragrance, who had used the cell proliferation spell, suddenly raised his hand and shot out a purple wave of light. Was this a moving light wave? The head of state stared at Lord Dark Fragrance, whose eyes were fluctuating. His aura increased dramatically and was already completely different from before. The head of state stopped, but didn't gradually focus. Who goes there? Huaxiao Alliance headquarters. President Qi was also deep in thought at this scene as he thought of a high-level spell called the Cell Assimilation Spell. This was a kind of possession spell similar to a spirit ghost. As long as you obtained DNA beforehand, you could use this spell to possess a body from a distance. Most possession spells had a range, and the two bodies couldn't be too far apart, but the cell assimilation spell could ignore this limitation. However, there was a time limit. Under normal circumstances, the cell assimilation technique could only last 5 minutes at most when it was used to possess someone. This Lord Dark Fragrance was originally a biological scientist, and his research on cells was extremely thorough. He could even skillfully master a spell like the Cells at Work spell, so casting the cell assimilation spell couldn't be any easier. Who possessed this person? General Yi asked. President Qi sighed and said in a deep voice, looking at the current situation, the only one who can confront His Excellency the head of state head-on, is the leader behind Night Chief. Now, President Qi finally realized something. So all of this had been premeditated by Night Chief. From the sea and sky array to Night Ghost Spirit Emperor personally taking action, everything had been part of Night Chief's plan. Through Dark Fragrance's cell assimilation spell, Night Ghost Spirit Emperor had successfully possessed Night Ghost Spirit Emperor. This was a memorable scene for Night Ghost Spirit Emperor because it was his first head-on confrontation with the head of state of Huaxiao Nation. Night Ghost Spirit Emperor stared at the head of state and sneered. Your Excellency's smokescreen is pretty good. That humanoid magic treasure was just a step away from deceiving me and crossing the sea. There was no need for superfluous movements at all in a showdown between experts. The two of them faced each other from a distance and didn't look like they were doing anything, but they were in fact competing in secret. Night Ghost Spirit Emperor's intention was very clear. He knew that the time he could possess Wang Ming was limited, so he was deliberately stalling for time. In this situation, the head of state couldn't spare any extra effort to save Wang Ming, and could only rely on Zhai Yin and the other lead teachers to ensure Wang Ming's safety. Get out of the way. The head of state stared at Night Ghost Spirit Emperor with a profound look in his eyes, and his body released a frightening pressure. Your Excellency can step over this venerable one first, and this venerable one will naturally step aside. Night Ghost Spirit Emperor laughed. He was completely unafraid. Both of them were true immortals, and judging from the initial clash of auras, the head of state was sure that this Night Ghost Spirit Emperor's strength was on par with his own. If they fought in the real remains, it would definitely be harmful, not beneficial. What was more, this was the first time Night Ghost Spirit Emperor was fighting an enemy while possessing him. Exposing too much definitely wasn't a good thing. What a pity. At that moment, Night Ghost Spirit Emperor suddenly sighed. What a pity that the humanoid magic treasure Your Excellency sent had such good defense, and self-destructed before we could analyze it. Otherwise, this venerable one would have studied it carefully, and then called a deity spirit car to send it back. In any case, it's just an old man robot that doesn't look very beautiful. No matter how beastly some deity spirit car drivers are, they probably won't go so far as to lay their hands on an old man. Hearing this, the head of state's face darkened. He did his best to maintain his composure. He knew that the other party was trying to goad him into making a move. For a moment, the confrontation between the two great experts was in a deadlock. Elsewhere, Ghost Head Blade advanced unimpeded under the cover of Night Ghost Spirit Emperor and Dark Fragrance's cell proliferation spell. For a moment, Zhai Yin was under immense pressure. The lead teachers who had been left behind weren't as strong as her, and they lacked combat experience, so they had no idea what to do in the face of these menacing criminals. After receiving Wang Ming's coordinates, most of the teachers attacked the core array pattern. As long as the sea and sky array didn't disappear for even a moment, the real remains would be in danger of being destroyed. Space Slash. Ghost Head Blade dashed forward as fast as a beam of light. The moment he got close, Zhai Yin's expression abruptly changed. It was actually a space slash. This was a purely suicidal saber technique. Zhai Yin never thought that Ghost Head Blade, who had been clamoring for a host earlier, would actually use such a suicidal blade technique in the blink of an eye. Go to hell. Ghost Head Blade let out a low sneer, and the blade cut through the cracks in the air as it directly pierced through Zhai Yin's body. But contrary to Ghost Head Blade's expectations, it seemed that Zhai Yin hadn't been hit. Her body appeared on the other side. Zhai Yin had been saved by Wang Ming's brain deduction technique. Ghost Head Blade was flustered and exasperated, but he didn't stop attacking. Just as he was about to attack Wang Ming, the latter suddenly clutched his head and let out a pained roar. The next moment, a black hole rose from the top of Wang Ming's head. Chapter 747. August 1st, Tuesday in the 15th week of the semester. Wang Ming had disappeared on his birthday. To be exact, the exact time of his disappearance should have been a little earlier. The summer camp activities had to be temporarily suspended. Right now, the most important task was to send someone to search for Wang Ming. Of course, the students didn't know about Wang Ming's disappearance. Most of them had been in the glass box when it happened, and had no idea what was going on in the outside world. As the chief commander of the teachers, Wu Jinjuan's explanation for the temporary suspension of the summer camp was that a group of foreign rebels had been caught yesterday, and they needed to assign some people to conduct a preliminary interrogation. After the interrogation was over, the summer camp would resume as usual. Apart from Wang Ling and Fang Xing, no one else in the line of students knew the truth. The only good news was that the sea and sky array had been dispelled, and Lord Dark Fragrance, who was responsible for the cell summoning, had also been taken down by the head of state after the effects of the cell assimilation spell ended. After that, Audiobook's special operations team arrived and entered the rainbow glass box to attend the meeting with Wu Jinjuan. Zhai Yin was supposed to be at the meeting, but because of the battle and her deep self-blame, the moment Wang Ming was sucked into the black hole, she had collapsed. The medical team had no choice but to give her a strong sedative and force her to rest. In the conference room inside the rainbow glass box, Audjua took Little Silver and Fatty Luo with him, while Wuji transformed into her original form and was stored in Audjua's storage space. Right now, Limitless Sword God's identity could not be revealed, or else it would attract unnecessary trouble. Wu Zhenjuan, let me introduce these two people to Mr. Luo Chuang and Mr. Silver, the Special Operations Team's right-hand men this time. I met them on the Cultivation Forum, and they're very good friends with me and Great Death Courting Senior. Audjua introduced Fatty Luo and Little Silver. Wu Zhenjuan nodded. Fatty Luo and Little Silver had to have been specially vetted by the authorities to be able to enter the remains as part of the Special Operations Team, so Wu Zhenjuan hadn't asked too much about their identities. In fact, as soon as he heard that they were friends of that Great Death Courting Senior, Wu Zhenjuan knew that there was basically nothing wrong with them. Great Death Courting Senior was a famous person in the circle. His realm was not high, but his ability to court death was strong. All these years, not only had he been fighting evil forces everywhere, he had also been busy doing charity work. Although Wu Zhenjuan hadn't had any special contact with grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, he had heard about him through various grapevines. To sum it up in one sentence, not only did this person like to court death, his family also had a mine. Clearing his throat, Wu Zhenjuan said, "Next, I'll explain to Director Zhuo what's happening now." This was a secret meeting for Audjua's Special Operations Team, and Wu Zhenjuan and Audjua's team were the only ones in the huge conference room. Wu Zhenjuan, thanks to Teacher Wang, the sea and sky array has already been broken. However, a small number of activated white blood cells, red blood cells, and macrophages are still roaming around the ruins. We've already sent some teachers to track them down. The Dark Network fugitive, codenamed Dark Fragrance, gave these cells a new order before he was arrested, asking them to destroy the spirit plants. This was already a broken pot that had been smashed. Can't we destroy the summoning array? Audjua sighed. Wu Zhenjuan shook his head. Although the summoning array in the fake remains was destroyed through the sea and sky array's transmission, the activated cells that were teleported to the real remains weren't affected by the array's range. I see. Audjua nodded. Wu Zhenjuan, the second thing I want to talk about is that Teacher Wang and Ghost Head Blade were sucked into the black hole during the operation this time. According to President Qi of Huaxiu Alliance, this black hole wasn't a space fissure formed by the space slash, but a special side effect of Teacher Wang's brain deduction technique when it was overloaded. Audjua, Little Silver and Fatty Luo were blank when they heard this, and didn't quite understand what he meant. Wu Zhenjuan thought for a bit, then gave a simpler explanation. Actually, to put it simply, Director Zhuo can understand it as Teacher Wang's mental fluctuations affecting the real world because his brain was overworking, thus creating the legendary brain hole. That black hole is actually a brain hole. Audjua was silent for a long time. After a while, he looked up at Wu Zhenjuan. What are Teacher Wang's chances of survival? He wanted to hear Huaxiu Nation's official data on Wang Ming's chances of survival. Actually, Audjua knew that there was a high chance that Wang Ming wouldn't die at all. After all, he was a man backed by Shifu. Furthermore, when Audjua had seen Shifu's relaxed expression during the meeting, his heart had instantly become as clear as a mirror. He speculated that Shifu had most likely given Wang Ming a resurrection token. Wu Zhenjuan's face darkened at Audjua's words. After a while, he looked up at Audjua. A brain hole is also a special form of a spatial storm. If a cultivator falls into one and isn't prepared, their chances of survival are less than 30%, unless they're almighties at or above itinerant immortal level, whose physical qualities allow them to travel through the spatial storm. Given that Teacher Wang is immortal, his chances of survival are very low. After saying that, Wu Zhenjuan raised his little finger. This is Teacher Wang's current chances of survival, Audjua, 1%. Wu Zhenjuan, 1 in 10,000, Audjua. By the time the meeting ended, it was already the wee hours of August 1st. 2/3 of the teachers in the rainbow glass box had been sent out to look for Wang Ming, even if many of them knew in their hearts that his chances of survival were very slim, and there was probably no one here who was more familiar with the spatial storm than Wuji. It was true that a spatial storm was very scary. If it was just a mortal body, it would be torn to shreds in an instant once it was sucked in. But Wuji had another opinion. A brain hole isn't the only thing that can lead to a spatial storm, it's just that there's a higher probability of it forming, Wuji said. There's another situation, and that's spatial turbulence. If it's in a spatial turbulence, Mr. Wang's chances of survival will be much higher. Space turbulence was a spatial anomaly with a very low probability of occurring. People who were swallowed by it would drift in space for a very long time, and in the end would be spat back into their original world. Of course, the position in which they would be spat out would definitely change. It was random. Chapter 748. Wang Ming woke up. The first thing he felt was sharp pain, as if his head had been cut open with a watermelon knife. This feeling lasted for a very long time before Wang Ming recovered a little. Even when he moved, he didn't dare make too big of a movement for fear of hurting his head. By the time he sat up straight to figure out where on earth he was, it had already been 2 hours since he had opened his eyes. Tormented by the headache, he was covered in sweat when he sat up, and the white coat he was wearing was already soaked through. Now, he could finally see his surroundings clearly. He was in the middle of an aurora. The scene in front of him was a sea of glass with no end in sight. The sky was full of bright purple and red auroras, which intertwined and dazzled the eyes. And now, he was sitting on the bamboo raft that the heavenly materials sword had turned into, drifting in the sea of glass. Is this what old Qi meant by brain hole? After calming his thoughts, Wang Ming thought about why he was here. He remembered very clearly that he had forcibly used the brain deduction technique to save Zhai Yin while his brain was overloaded, which was why he had ended up like this. If it hadn't been for the heavenly materials sword, he would have already been torn to shreds by the storm the moment he had been sucked into the space. High-end magic swords all had a save the master spirit blade mechanism, and the activation of this mechanism usually depended on the sword's spirit. The better the rapport between the sword and its master, the more likely the sword's spirit would come out to block the blade in a critical moment, even at the cost of its own life. But Wang Ming's heavenly materials sword didn't have a sword spirit, and this save the master spirit blade mechanism was nothing more than a similar effect that Wang Ming had created using scientific methods. In any case, the heavenly materials sword was a rare magic sword that Qing Yu had created at great cost. When he had redesigned the heavenly materials sword back then, Wang Ming had thought that apart from adding some scientific elements to it, he would also do his best to conform to the traditional definition of a magic sword. Simply put, his scientific magic sword could do the same thing as a regular magic sword. It was just that Wang Xing never thought that this idea he had back then would actually come in handy at this moment. Brat, you're awake? Just as Wang Ming was pondering how to get out, Ghost Head Blade's voice rang out from the bamboo raft. Startled, Wang Ming hurriedly sat back on his haunches. After taking a closer look, he realized that Ghost Head Blade really was on the bamboo raft. The heavenly materials sword savior mechanism could only be activated on its owner. Wang Ming guessed that the heavenly materials sword had probably mistaken Ghost Head Blade's blade form for his magic treasure, so it had saved him as well. This could be considered a flaw in Wang Ming's design. Wang Ming grit his teeth. He hadn't expected to slip up so easily. If he could get out of here in the future, he must fix this bug. If he could get out. However, Ghost Head Blade's situation seemed to be even worse than his. Logically speaking, Ghost Head Blade would definitely kill him, but Ghost Head Blade wasn't in a hurry to act. He quietly laid in his blade form in front of the bamboo raft, not even revealing a hint of killing intent. Or perhaps, Ghost Head Blade no longer had the strength to display his killing intent. I didn't expect that in the end, I would fall into trouble with you, and get sucked into the dead sea of space. Dao's voice was very weak. Was this the dead sea of space? Wang Ming narrowed his eyes and didn't dare make any big movements. He had been so startled by Ghost Head Blade's voice that he had sat back on his haunches, but in the end, his head had almost exploded. He remembered that old Qi had taught him about the cultivation vacuum before. The dead sea of space could be considered a type of space turbulence, which was a little better than a space storm. However, when you were sucked into it, you would still suffer the pain of space being torn apart. The only difference was that the space turbulence phenomenon corresponded to the Dead Sea of space. This kind of environment was slightly safer, while the space storm corresponded to an even bigger storm. Unless one was an almighty cultivator, most people would not be able to return after entering. Wang Ming stretched his hand out of the bamboo raft and lightly dipped it in a drop of the Dead Sea of Space's water. This was a type of space liquid which was extremely buoyant. It was bottomless and wouldn't be dangerous if you touched it lightly, but you absolutely couldn't immerse yourself in it for a long time. Otherwise, no matter how strong you were, the space liquid would slowly corrode you. If you were to throw the demon head blade off the bamboo raft now. Wang Ming instantly had a bold idea. But this idea was quickly interrupted by Ghost Head Blade's voice. Brat. I know what you're thinking. I'm warning you, I'm in so much pain that I can barely move right now, but if you dare make a move on me, believe it or not, I'll immediately cut your throat and take you down with me. Wang Ming withdrew his thoughts. His intuition told him that this wasn't an alarmist talk. Given Ghost Head Blade's current state, it was impossible for him to possess Wang Ming's body for the time being, but he definitely had the strength to take him down with him. The heavenly materials sword had now turned into a bamboo raft to protect her, and this was the only weapon Wang Ming had left. If he still had the heavenly materials sword, he might still be able to put up a fight against Ghost Head Blade, who was almost at death's door. But since he couldn't directly use the heavenly materials sword, it was definitely an irrational choice to fight force with force. After all, he was just a mortal. Of course, I still have to save the last bit of strength to get out of here. If you don't have any ill intentions towards me, I naturally won't attack you. It won't do me any good. Ghost Head Blade smiled bitterly. You still want to get out of here? Wang Ming was amused. Once we're sucked into the Dead Sea of space, unless we can tear the space ourselves, we can only wait for the space to expel foreign objects and spit us out. What do you think are the chances of that? A lot of people misunderstood the phenomenon of space turbulence, and that was that after being sucked into it, the space would spit you out on its own in a few hours. Indeed, the Dead Sea of space would spit out living things in a few hours in the real world, but the flow of time inside was different from that in the real world outside. For every day spent drifting in the Dead Sea of space, only 10 minutes had passed in the outside world. It looks like you know a lot about the Dead Sea of space. Ghost Head Blade gave a sinister laugh. As you said, it's almost impossible for me to get out in my current state. But I dare to speculate that you definitely have a way to get out. Your brain can help me get out of danger, so this is one of the reasons why I chose not to kill you. Speaking up to this point, Ghost Head Blade's voice suddenly turned cold. So now, you only have two choices. 1. Perish together with me. 2. We'll work together and get out. Fine, I choose the second. Wang Ming spread his hands and didn't hesitate at all. But when you say work together, how do you mean work together? Ghost Head Blade, you think of a way out, I'll cheer you on. Chapter 749. Wang Ming wasn't a fool. Since they were going to work together to escape, Ghost Head Blade had to pay a price, otherwise it would be a huge loss for him. Although Ghost Head Blade claimed that he wanted to throw caution to the wind in the current situation, Wang Ming felt that Ghost Head Blade's chances of survival were higher. Ghost Head Blade really wanted to get out of here, but that didn't mean that Wang Ming could use this as a threat. Wang Ming remembered what Ghost Head Blade had said before. In his blade form, he had to find a host within a few days, otherwise his soul would be cursed by the ancient artifact spirit and be directly destroyed. That was to say, Wang Ming had to figure out a way to get out within 2 days at the very least. Otherwise, given Ghost Head Blade's personality, he would definitely throw caution to the wind and drag Wang Ming down with him. This game had already begun when the two of them had drifted on the bamboo raft that the heavenly materials sword had turned into. Wang Ming realized that if he wanted to survive, he had to race against time. In the end, time flowed differently in the outside world, and he wasn't sure whether Wang Ling would be able to find him. He had clearly told Wang Ling before to keep a low profile as much as possible during the summer camp, in order to avoid arousing the suspicions of the many teachers this time. But Wang Ming had always been looking forward to Wang Ling's appearance. But in the end, it was just that, if possible, Wang Ming still wanted to use his own strength to break through this crisis. At any time, it was better to rely on oneself than on others. He had to survive, he still had too many unfinished business. If he died, who would listen to old Chi's nagging? He had promised old Chi that one day, he would definitely become the latter's most outstanding disciple, surpass his father, and live up to his name as the wisdom saint. If he died, what would happen to the research on Head of State 001? This was the work he was most proud of so far. If he died, who would eat Zhai Yin's unpalatable dragon pork chop? If he died, what would happen to the research on primordial qi? Who would save his little brother? For a moment, Wang Ming's thoughts raced. Wang Ming had always felt that he was like a flower in a greenhouse, he was always protected and airtight by others. He had never thought that one day he would be in trouble. If it wasn't for this experience, Wang Ming felt that he wouldn't have thought about these problems at all. Wang Ming, he had to do everything he could to break out of here and survive. Wang Ming pondered deeply. The look in his eyes inexplicably reassured Ghost Head Blade. This was a gamble. He hadn't chosen to kill Wang Ming, but had pinned all his hopes of survival on Wang Ming alone. As for the promise not to make a move on Wang Ming and the two of them going out together, promise? How much could it be worth? Ghost Head Blade had already made up his mind. As long as Wang Ming figured out a way to get out, he would use the last bit of his strength to possess Wang Ming's body. He didn't have much time left. In less than 4 days, his soul would be cursed, and he would perish. He had to live. Only by living could he have everything. Ghost Head Blade knew that there was no turning back now that he had come this far. He had been a knife in the hands of others for many years, accepted all kinds of missions, and even made deals with the ancient artifact spirit at all costs to become what he was today. All of this was so that he could live forever. Constantly changing the physical body of the host could, in a sense, achieve a kind of disguised immortality. As for Ghost Head Blade, he wanted to bring glory to his sect. Ghost Axe sect was recognized as the #1 killer sect in the circle, and had been founded by Numinous Mother. He was the third disciple of this sect, after Gorgeous Itinerant and Taoist Tao Tai. In Ghost Axe sect, the strong were revered. Ghost Head Blade's lifelong wish was to complete the task assigned to him by his sect, kill 10,000 people and inherit the sect's true legacy. Thus, Ghost Head Blade didn't think he could die here, brat. I advise you to think of a way within 12 hours, or you'll die without a doubt, Ghost Head Blade said in a threatening voice. You don't have to tell me, I know. Wang Ming replied indifferently, I should be able to think of a way, but you know, functioning the brain consumes brain cells, and I get a headache whenever I think about things. Do you have anything to eat here? 2 walnuts would also be good for the brain. Ghost Head Blade's voice turned cold. What trick are you playing at? Trick? How would I dare? Wang Ming waved his hand with a weak expression. You should know that I'm just an ordinary person, and I can't go a day without food. Ghost Head Blade was instantly speechless. Because this was indeed the truth. And he had overlooked this point just now, forgetting that Wang Ming was just an ordinary person. What a troublesome brat. Here. Ghost Head Blade had no choice but to offer up his tonic. It was a red oval-shaped pill the size of a myrtle. This is a chi-replenishing pill. Ghost Head Blade said. This was a level 4 elixir which was exceptionally expensive. Apart from healing injuries, it could also boost one's spirit and act as a fasting pill. This was the only elixir Ghost Head Blade had on him, which he had initially saved for the host's body. If the host's body was injured. Generally speaking, one pill could heal some of the damage, but now that he had lost his body, Ghost Head Blade naturally wouldn't be able to enjoy it. In this current situation, it was more important to work together for a win-win situation. He wanted Wang Ming to think of a way to get out of here first. Wang Ming's recovery would also be good for Ghost Head Blade if he wanted to possess Wang Ming later. In any case, after the possession was successful, this elixir would also be used to supplement the host. It was just a matter of time. Thanks. Wang Ming didn't stand on ceremony, and directly swallowed the elixir. Since Ghost Head Blade wanted him to think of a way in this situation, the elixir he gave him would definitely be a good one, and he definitely wouldn't give him poison. Sure enough, after taking the chi replenishing pill, its effects immediately showed, and Wang Ming felt his head instantly light up. This elixir just now had restored him by at least 50%, but Wang Ming didn't directly show it on his face, and instead frowned. This elixir of yours, it's not very effective. Ghost Head Blade sneered. Brat, this is the last elixir I have on me, it's enough to last you a few days. You can't find any other excuse now, right? Hurry up and think of a way. I've already given you the elixir, as for its effects, it's none of my business. Actually, Ghost Head Blade really couldn't guarantee the effectiveness of the elixir. For cultivators, spirit energy was needed to speed up the digestion of this type of high-level elixir. For an ordinary person, it might take a very long time to completely digest it. Ghost Head Blade didn't know enough about elixirs, since Ghost Axe sect only taught killer techniques. Half an hour after the elixir entered his stomach, Wang Ming had already sufficiently broken down its medicinal properties. Cultivators used spirit energy to speed up the digestion process, and Wang Ming used meditation. Meditation could achieve the same effect, but the prerequisite was that one had to have a powerful brain. If Wang Ming wanted to, he could even use meditation to lift himself slightly off the ground, but only for a very short time. On the bamboo raft, Ghost Head Blade was a little impatient. Brat, what's your plan? Wang Ming crossed his arms. Don't worry, I'm almost done. In fact, when Wang Ming had first observed the Dead Sea of Space, he had already thought of a way. Chapter 750. This Dead Sea of Space had absorbed too much trash from the outside world, and there were a lot of magic treasure fragments floating in it. If you were lucky, you might even find magic treasures that looked almost intact. However, after being drawn into the Dead Sea of Space, most of these magic treasures had already lost their effectiveness after being soaked in the Dead Sea of Space. The spirit liquid in the Dead Sea had a strong corrosive effect. Of course, that didn't rule out the possibility that some magic treasures could resist corrosion. If he wanted to break out of this Dead Sea of Space, Wang Ming deduced that corrosion resistance was especially important. Thus, these broken magic treasures floating in the Dead Sea of Space were in fact very useful. Perhaps he could find the parts he wanted. Wang Ming took off his white coat and belt. Unfortunately, Wang Ming thought that the long johns were too hot, so he had left them in the dormitory in the glass box instead of directly taking them out. Wang Ming had thought that since it was only the first day of the summer camp, there shouldn't be any accidents. In the end, he had ended up in this situation. Only now did he realize the benefits of the long johns. The long johns had been personally enchanted by Wang Ling, and were especially useful in this situation. Ghost Head Blade didn't know exactly what Wang Ming wanted to do, but when he saw Wang Ming move, he immediately understood that the other party probably already had an idea. After taking off his white coat and unbuckling his belt, Wang Ming checked the spirit power in his storage ring. Currently, there was still 72% spirit power left, which was enough for him to carry out the follow-up plan. But Wang Ming couldn't directly say it out loud. This was one of his trump cards, and he absolutely couldn't let Ghost Head Blade know about it. Thus, he frowned deeply. Wang Ming frowned, and for some reason, Ghost Head Blade felt flustered. Brat, what's wrong now? Wang Ming clenched his fists and pretended to think about it. Then, his eyebrows furrowed deeply in an attempt to highlight the seriousness of the matter. I've thought of an idea. Go on. Ghost Head Blade said faintly. Our research institute developed a device called the Spirit Power Amplification Cannon before. Wang Ming said, this device can transform spirit energy into a substantial shock wave, which has the formidable power of moving 1,000 caddies with little effort. There are a lot of broken magic treasures floating in this Dead Sea of Space. If I use these parts well, I can build one right away. It'll take me about 2 days. Wang Ming's words were very decisive and full of confidence. Ghost Head Blade did not doubt these words at all. The Dead Sea of Space was a place similar to a graveyard for magic treasures. In the past, too many almighty beings had torn apart space during their battles, causing magic treasures to be accidentally drawn into the Dead Sea of Space. Rumor had it that when the Crouching Bull's spiritual master fought the Crimson Firmament Emperor, Li Yao, their world-defying immortal warship had fallen into the Dead Sea of Space after the collision. That was a long time ago, so long that even Ghost Head Blade could not remember exactly how long it had been. If these two immortal ships were still here, they would definitely be an immeasurable fortune. This was because Crouching Bull Daoist and Crimson Sky Emperor Li Yao had once sealed many of their treasures in the safe in the immortal warship. No matter how corrosive the spatial spirit liquid was, it was impossible for it to corrode a special safe. Moreover, the two immortal warships were huge, and they were world-defying Dharma treasures. It was unlikely that their hulls would be corroded so easily. It was just a pity that these two world-defying immortal warships had drifted to who knew where in the Dead Sea of Space over the past 1,000 years. The Dead Sea of Space was boundless, and you never knew what kind of magic treasure fragments would float around you in the next moment. Hence, with a certain level of understanding of the Dead Sea of Space, Ghost Head Blade believed Wang Ming's words to the utmost. There were all kinds of magic treasure fragments floating around here that already looked completely useless, but this strongest brain might really have a way to use these fragments to remake magic treasures. However, Ghost Head Blade instantly fell silent when Wang Ming said that it would take 2 days to make them. 1 day. I want you to make the magic treasure in 1 day, Ghost Head Blade said after a moment. There was a hint of coercion in his tone. He couldn't wait that long, 2 days was too long for him. Whether this magic treasure could send out a powerful shock wave to break through the Dead Sea of Space's barrier and take them out was still a question. If it failed, it would take time for Wang Ming to make a new magic treasure. However, his original body wouldn't allow him to wait that long. For Ghost Head Blade, the curse of the ancient artifact spirit was more like an uncertain time bomb. Hence, he needed Wang Ming to speed up and develop this thing as soon as possible. Only 1 day. Wang Ming's frown deepened. It's not impossible, but you have to help. If you're sure that this cannon you're talking about will work, I can do it, Ghost Head Blade said. It'll definitely work, I'm very confident. Wang Ming said, when the cannon is fired, it'll definitely shatter this space wall and we'll be able to get out. But 1 day's time was really tight. You have to help. What do you want to do? Ghost Head Blade asked. I need spirit energy. Speaking up to this point, Wang Ming took out a toolbox from his storage ring and grinned. The tools in this toolbox can only be used if spirit energy is injected into them. If you want to make a magic treasure, you'll need to use the tools inside. You know, I'm a mortal, and I usually have assistants to help me in the lab. In a situation like this, you're the only one with spirit energy. Wang Ming's words were half true and half false. The tools in the toolbox did indeed require spirit energy to use, but he usually used the spirit energy sealed in his storage ring in the lab, and could do the work on his own. The ring on his hand wasn't just a storage ring, but also a storage ring. Although there was still 72% spirit energy in reserve, Wang Ming estimated that if he were to remake the magic treasure, he would need to use up at least 40% of his spirit energy, and his ultimate plan would end in failure. So from the very beginning, Wang Ming had just been playing tricks. Wang Ming had originally estimated that it would only take 1 day to make this magic treasure, but he had deliberately said 2 days to let Ghost Head Blade bargain. His goal was just to swindle Ghost Head Blade out of his spirit energy. Wang Ming took out the tools and lined them up on the bamboo raft that the heavenly materials sword had turned into. He then took a deep breath and stared at Ghost Head Blade. Hey, how about it? Do you want to cooperate? You're the one who wants to be fast, but in the end, you're the one who's dragging things out. Do you still want to get out? If you don't, we might as well die together. Fine. I can give you spirit energy, Ghost Head Blade grit his teeth, feeling extremely sullen. He felt resentful in his heart. But given the current situation, he could only endure it. He had already decided in his heart that the moment the magic treasure was ready, he would immediately take over Wang Ming's body. Ghost Head Blade sneered. In the end, this was just a hothead. Chapter 751. Wang Ling knew that Wang Ming was still alive. After Wang Ling had activated the mind-reading ability, all he had heard were the teachers in charge of this summer camp lamenting Wang Ling's death. He still had the paper crane, life talisman, that he had made for Wang Ming, which could be used to pay for Wang Ming's life once. But the life talisman had yet to take effect, which was enough to prove that Wang Ming wasn't dead. Furthermore, Wang Ling immediately deduced that Wang Ming was probably in the Dead Sea of space right now. However, in the hearts of most people, Wang Ming was already dead. Even Wu Zhenjuan was already preparing for Wang Ming's funeral. For example, a funeral photo. In order to protect his identity, Wang Ming had never taken an ID photo in his military uniform. Currently, the only official photo he had on file was the one taken when he had created the fake official ID, Wang Shower. In the ID photo, Wang Ming was wearing a dark black short-sleeved shirt and smiling very stupidly. Is this the only photo we have? Wu Zhenjuan sighed endlessly as he stared at Wang Ming's photo. That's right. Another accompanying teacher also sighed. Also, the higher-ups want us to prepare all the information on this incident. I understand. I'm writing up what happened, and I'm also writing up my reflection. Wu Zhenjuan nodded. Next, they could only wait for instructions from the higher-ups. According to Wu Zhenjuan's judgment, if Wang Ming was dead, the higher-ups would definitely directly publicize his identity. Although Wang Ming was just an ordinary person, he was the strongest brain, hiding behind the scenes in Huaxiao Nation all these years. Over the last 20 years or so, he had made great contributions to the technological breakthroughs in various cultivation magic treasures in Huaxiao Nation. Wang Ming's identity had to be kept a secret when he was alive. After his death, Wang Ming's identity and achievements would definitely be exposed in broad daylight. Perhaps Wang Ming's photo would be in next year's math, physics, and chemistry textbooks. Although the authorities only had this one ID photo of Wang Ming, Teacher Wang was also a poor man. I never thought that there would only be one photo. If I had known earlier, I would have taken a photo with him. The leading teacher sighed endlessly at the photo. Then what's the higher-ups' opinion? They thought that we would take some photos of Teacher Wang on the way, but in the end we didn't. The main thing was that the smile on the ID card was too silly and not serious at all. But now, there's no other way. Teacher Wang doesn't have a military uniform photo. The higher-up said to Photoshop the head of this photo onto the military uniform and make it into a memorial. Wu Zhenjuan, Wang Ling, elsewhere, in Huaxiao Alliance's headquarters, the entire headquarters had instantly gone into overdrive after Wang Ming's disappearance. The command center sent technical personnel to connect one-to-one with all the teachers who had gone out to search for Wang Ming in the real remains. In addition to providing relevant technical support remotely, they also helped these teachers connect with the expert group outside the remains. The main role of the group of external experts was to provide long-range support for the teachers who were heading west to search for Wang Ming's whereabouts. The main thing was that the western half of the remains had yet to be fully explored, and currently, only Huaxiao Alliance's team of experts had some unpublished information. The experience of the teachers in charge of the team was limited. If they encountered some poisonous spirit plants that they didn't recognize, as long as there were long-range experts around, they could basically avoid them. Inside the real remains, Huaxiao Alliance already knew the eastern half of the map like the back of their hand, and there basically wouldn't be any accidents. But the western half was still completely unknown. Even if Wang Ming was still alive, if the space spat him out in the western half, it would still be very dangerous. So at that time, President Qi had immediately instructed Wu Zhenjuan to assign some reliable teachers to search for Wang Ming's whereabouts in the west. Apart from Wang Ling, there was also President Qi, who believed all along that Wang Ming was still alive. After learning that Wang Ming was in trouble, President Qi put his hands behind his back and stared straight ahead in one direction for a very long time. General Yi and the other 10 generals had been watching this scene from beginning to end. General Yi hadn't expected old Qi, who was usually so protective of his children, to actually be so calm after learning of Wang Ming's death. But the truth was that General Yi had a hunch that this was all just a facade. After about 10 minutes, President Qi finally moved. He turned around and looked at General Yi. "Old Yi, I need you to help me look after the place." "All right." General Yi agreed straight away. He didn't say another word. The moment President Qi turned around, General Yi and the other 10 generals present already knew what on earth President Qi was going to do. In everyone's eyes, old Qi was a well-behaved person who had always done things according to the rules. Of course, this didn't mean that old Qi didn't have a bottom line. It had already been more than 4,000 years since Huaxiao Nation had been founded. As one of the 10 founding generals, old Qi's cultivation was naturally unfathomable. But in the thousands of years before he met Wang Ming, this wisdom saint had never accepted a single disciple. All of the 10 generals present remembered old Qi's delighted expression when he discovered Wang Ming back then, as if he had just become a father. Furthermore, at the beginning, they had all been amazed by old Qi's choice. Some of them even couldn't figure out why old Qi would choose such an ordinary person as his disciple. But in the end, it turned out that old Qi's choice was the right one. Wang Ming's appearance had indeed repeatedly provided major breakthroughs in some of the technical problems with magic treasures. Old Qi had restricted Wang Ming's movements, hidden his real information, and protected this disciple of his as if he were the apple of his eye. Now, something had happened to Wang Ming. In fact, everyone's hearts were as clear as a mirror. Old Qi. Thus, when old Qi reached the entrance of Huaxiao Alliance's headquarters, Marshal Jiang called out to him. President Qi stopped and turned his head slightly. "What is it? What's done can't be changed. You have to act appropriately." This was Marshal Jiang's reminder. President Qi understood. After a moment of silence, he spoke again. "But someone hurt my disciple, so I naturally have to go and demand an explanation. That Night Chief is indeed quite formidable. But I think it's fine to give him a warning. If His Excellency the head of state finds out, he'll definitely be furious. I've already made up my mind. If the head of state punishes me later, I'll take the blame." President Qi pinched his mustache. "You haven't accepted a disciple you're proud of, have you? You definitely don't understand what I'm doing today, but I believe that you'll understand in the future." Marshal Jiang was instantly speechless. "Also, let me correct one thing. Chapter 752. The 10 generals had all come from that era, and each of them had very deep private friendships with each other, which was why Huaxiao Nation was what it was today. If the 10 generals hadn't been united, the country would have long been riddled with internal strife. Of course, the 10 generals had anticipated from the Night Chief incident that there might be a mole in Huaxiao Alliance's management. However, this matter still needed to be investigated slowly, because they didn't have any concrete evidence. It would naturally be best if they could catch the culprit red-handed. The moment something happened to Wang Ming, General Yi, Marshal Jiang, and the others had already had a premonition that old Qi would definitely step forward. Old Qi was famous for being protective of his own. Especially at the Research Institute, Wang Ming had always been secretly reported by jealous colleagues, but before these reports could reach Huaxiao Alliance, old Qi had stopped them with one hand and destroyed them. Old Qi often said, geniuses were always envied. When he was young, old Qi had suffered a lot because of this. But shielding was one thing, and educating was another. Geniuses all appreciated each other. Although Wang Ming was sometimes arrogant, he had absolute respect for old Qi. They lived like master and disciple at work, and like father and son in life. For old Qi, after he retired one day, Wang Ming was the only person who could take on the position of wisdom saint. Although in the eyes of most people, Wang Ming was still very young and was still lacking in all sorts of ways, from the moment President Qi had discovered him, he had been almost certain that this person was the only hope and expectation he had left in his life. Old Qi didn't leave the Huaxiao Alliance building, but went to his office. He wanted to give those people at Night Chief a warning. But that didn't mean he had to go overseas. Old Chi knew his identity as one of the 10 generals. If he went out like this, it wouldn't just be the head of state who would be alarmed, but the entire international media would be shaken. Thus, President Chi had already made up his mind to use a practical method. Is everything ready? When he returned to the office, a young man was already waiting for Old Chi. This was Old Chi's office assistant, Chi Mengyu. Old Chi didn't have a family, and Chi Mengyu was Old Chi's adopted son, as well as a trusted aide whom Old Chi had brought up. He wasn't a genius in cultivation, but he was still passable. Chi Mengyu was a lot older than Wang Ming, and the two of them were like brothers who weren't related by blood, but were as close as real brothers. Everything is ready. The equipment was just tested a few days ago. There won't be any problems, Chi Mengyu replied. When he found out that something had happened to Wang Ming, Chi Mengyu knew that Old Chi might make a move, but he never thought that Old Chi would actually go this far for Wang Ming. The last time Old Chi activated the equipment in his office was when they were fighting against the demon gods hundreds of years ago. In fact, this set of equipment was actually a set of spiritual power amplification diffusion device. The design of the device was very simple. As long as one sat on the sofa in the space capsule and put on a wireless helmet, they would be able to complete the spiritual power amplification. Once he put on the helmet, with Old Chi's current mental strength combined with specific cultivation spells, he could easily communicate with people in every corner of the earth, and he could even perform long-range mental attacks. This amplifier had already been upgraded to version 8.0, and Wang Ming had personally completed the last version update. Mengyu, stand guard outside the door. No one is allowed to come in, President Chi said to Chi Mengyu. President Chi then turned a knob in a secret compartment on his desk, and the bookshelf behind him instantly opened to reveal a safe the size of a Rubik's Cube. President Chi looked at it, and the safe opened automatically. With a spirit light, President Chi was directly sucked into the Rubik's Cube. The entire set of equipment had been shrunk using space expansion technology before it was placed inside the safe. This safe came with an array that shrank the Earth to inches, and after confirming one's identity with the pupil, the array would automatically activate. On the other side, Wang Ming was examining the tools on the bamboo raft. As promised, Ghost Head Blade had already injected enough spirit energy into the toolbox for Wang Ming to use. After some calculations, Wang Ming realized that there was still plenty of spirit energy in the toolbox. When the time came, he would store the extra spirit energy back into the ring. This is the blueprint for the amplifier. In order to ensure that it can blast through the space wall here, my design parameters are much larger than the original, so that it can hit the target in one shot. It took Wang Ming 10 minutes or so to use the drawing board in the toolbox to draw out the blueprint of the entire amplification cannon, including the parameters of each part, and the corresponding formula at the bottom. Ghost Head Blade didn't really understand it, but this blueprint gave him a strong sense of security. Looking at the blueprint, Ghost Head Blade suddenly asked, I heard that you're Wisdom Saint's disciple. That's right. Wang Ming was non-committal. Since the other party had already asked, it was enough to prove that he had definitely investigated something, so there was no point in hiding it. Our Old Chi also has an amplification cannon, and I designed the latest version, so I'm very familiar with these parameters. Wang Ming said, at the very beginning, the prototype of this device was actually a spirit amplifier. After Old Chi developed it, he gave it to a foreign mutants organization. There was a professor who used this device to recruit all kinds of people, and even set up a mutant school. But there was a flaw in the original design. After using too many spirit amplifiers, it was very easy for someone to go bald, so it didn't take long for this professor to become bald. And this mutant school is still around. When I went abroad with Old Chi before, I even went there to take a look. Ghost Head Blade was suddenly curious and scared. Are you a smith? No, I'm just an inventor, Wang Ming replied. In a broad sense, smiths mainly use furnaces to refine weapons. After smelting the materials, they grind them into shape, and finally imbue them with magic and spirit. But for ordinary people like us who don't have spirit energy, as long as we're smart enough and are good at using modern technology, we can also make magic treasures. However, this type of magic treasure has a dual energy mechanism. Regular magic treasures forged by smiths need spirit energy to drive them, but the scientific magic treasures we forge can be powered by both rechargeable spirit energy and spirit energy. Ghost Head Blade hummed in agreement. What you said is what I understand. Actually, Ghost Head Blade's understanding of refining weapons was very limited. If it wasn't for Wang Ming, he probably wouldn't have known that there was actually such a difference between modern magic treasures. What Wang Ming needed to do now was to fully establish Ghost Head Blade's trust. Chapter 753. At Night Chief HQ, Night Ghost Spirit Emperor looked to be in a very good mood. Although his real body hadn't had direct contact with the head of state, at the very least he had successfully met that bigwig in Dark Fragrances body this time, and wasn't at a disadvantage at all. What did this mean? If he wrote a news report about this later and sent it to all the major media outlets, his Night Chief's momentum would grow even stronger. When that time came, the new members it would recruit would greatly bolster Night Chief's strength and make up for the losses it had suffered in carrying out its master plan in Huaxiao Nation this time. Only Night Ghost Spirit Emperor himself knew that whether or not level 13 spells existed in the real remains wasn't important. What was important was the impact of this collision, as well as the momentum and impact it would have. It was only in recent years since Night Chief had been established that the governments and militaries of various countries had set their sights on it. But no country had dared to rashly make a move against Night Chief. Why? Because Night Chief's foundation was much more stable than that of the other dark forces. Night Ghost Spirit Emperor had endured for hundreds of years to form Night Chief's core personnel and devote himself to developing scientific research and technology. Night Chief now had the ability to produce magic crystals, and more than that, the magic crystals they produced were still better than the average level in various countries, and they already had the ability to produce them in batches. What did this mean? It meant that when the time came, as long as Night Chief's members had high-level magic crystals, they would be a sufficient deterrent. Thus, it looked like Night Chief's plan to invade the remains this time had ended in failure. But the truth was that Night Ghost Spirit Emperor was really interested in the international influence it would bring. As for President Dylan, who might be sacrificed because of this master plan, and even Embark, who might die before the plan could be carried out, Night Ghost Spirit Emperor didn't feel the slightest heartache over the deaths of these two people. In exchange for international influence at the cost of losing two of their top generals, in Night Ghost Spirit Emperor's view, this was a very good deal. Even if the people were gone, they could still recruit more. But influence wasn't something that could be easily exchanged for. Of course, there was also an unexpected factor in this incident that worried Night Ghost Spirit Emperor, that mysterious expert hidden in the ranks. With just one release of his aura, all those activated cells had actually shrunk back like turtles. Who on earth was that expert? This was a mystery, but Night Ghost Spirit Emperor had a vague answer to this person's identity. He was basically convinced that this mysterious expert was the same person as the youngster who had killed President Bai. However, he did not know what the young man looked like. The only clue he had was the young man's brother. Night Ghost Spirit Emperor didn't know everything about Wang Ming. At the very beginning, Night Chief hadn't been able to fully investigate Wang's identity. But Night Ghost Spirit Emperor predicted that this person's identity wouldn't be simple, because the personal information on the ID card was too fake. If he wanted to know the youngster's specific identity, this close to him, Wang's Spirit Emperor's Ghost King Mo, the ghost of the best would be. If he wanted to know the young man's identity, this elder brother of his was the best shortcut. Night Ghost Spirit Emperor fiddled with the screen in the air as he looked at Wang Ming's information. Wang Ming didn't have any extra photos, and the one Night Ghost Spirit Emperor was looking at now was that very stupid ID photo. Night Ghost Spirit Emperor narrowed his eyes and instructed one of his subordinates, "Continue to follow up on this person. Report to me as soon as you have the latest information." This was the third president under him, Long Ming, an insect emissary, wearing a very thick chemical protective suit and a gas mask on his face. But after Night Ghost Spirit Emperor gave his instructions, Long Ming uncharacteristically didn't respond. Something didn't seem right. Night Ghost Spirit Emperor stood up, and his eyes turned sharp as he instantly became vigilant. In the next moment, Long Ming actually launched an attack on him. Pitch-black poisonous bees gushed out from the gaps of his protective suit like a tide. He knew that Long Ming was probably being controlled. Otherwise, even if Long Ming was given 1,000 guts, he wouldn't have dared to directly attack him. With a wave of his hand, Night Ghost Spirit Emperor unleashed a 5th-tier ice spell. Surging ice mist spewed out of his palm, instantly freezing the wasps into ice cubes that fell to the ground like snowflakes, shattering into pieces. At the same time, Night Ghost Spirit Emperor gave a low cry, "Long Ming! Wake up!" This low cry was mixed with a sound wave spell which could purify the mind and free a person whose mind was being controlled. However, the mental strength of the person controlling Long Ming was far beyond Night Ghost Spirit Emperor's imagination. This level 6 sound wave spell, Sound of Excitement, had no effect on Long Ming at all. In the stalemate, Night Ghost Spirit Emperor looked out of the corner of his eye and saw that apart from him, everyone else in Night Chief's command center was actually being controlled. Each and every one of them seemed to be frozen in time as they maintained their positions. This was an illusion caused by mental power controlling the brain's thoughts, as if time had stopped. It was clear that this Almighty had used his mental strength to track down the location of Night Chief's headquarters and had launched this surprise attack. Night Ghost Spirit Emperor's heart trembled. It looked like he would have to change the location of the headquarters again. After he had been hit by the implementation ball previously, he had already changed the location of the headquarters. Who would have thought that before the first wave was over, another wave would come? At the same time, Night Ghost Spirit Emperor also deduced the identity of this person. "I know who your excellency is. Apart from the commander of Huaxiao Nation's side and one of the famous 10 generals, Wisdom Saint, who else could possess such unimaginably powerful mental strength?" President Qi didn't say anything, but manipulated this insect envoy called Long Ming to launch an even fiercer attack. Tens of thousands of insects poured out and actually formed a maze of their own to surround Night Ghost Spirit Emperor. Petty tricks. Night Ghost Spirit Emperor sighed softly. With a gentle flick of his sleeve, these spirit insects were directly wiped out by a ball of starfire. The instant he wiped out these spirit insects, Long Ming actually took the initiative to charge at him and launch an attack. Insect attacks are Long Ming's specialty. If you control his mind, you should use what he's good at. Long Ming's close-range skills are the worst. Night Ghost Spirit Emperor didn't bother to hide his sneer. The next moment, he saw Long Ming wave his arm, and a slap was aimed directly at his face. "Long Ming usually only tickles me when he hits me in close range." Night Ghost Spirit Emperor laughed again, very happily. He didn't defend himself at all, and took the initiative to stretch out half his face. "Come, hit me here." Long Ming's body paused. It was clear that the person controlling Long Ming's mind had been frightened by Night Ghost Spirit Emperor's action. In the next moment, "Pa!" As Long Ming's slap landed solidly on his face, Night Ghost Spirit Emperor's expression changed dramatically. Like a cannonball, Night Ghost Spirit Emperor was sent flying out of the command post by this slap. On the other side, inside the military tent, Wang Ling withdrew his mental strength. This was the first time he had seen someone voluntarily stretch out their face for him to slap. He had never heard such a strange request. Chapter 754. Please listen to it on NetEase Cloud Music. Kugu Music and QQ Music will be released simultaneously in the next week. The Helplessness of the Immortal King, The Hopelessness of the Mortal King, singing, The Old is the Old and Feather Sacrifice Rabbit, Joshir Juren and Yuji Xiaotu, arrangement, Mill composition, Shinduis, mix, Ding Air, Dinger, lyrics/original book, Ku Xian, English lyrics. Last night I cultivated until the third hour is stageable night till themorning troubled by a trifle worried about some anything who can see the helplessness of the immortal king tell me can see how helpless this thing one gene of. Flying talismans arising gene of flying talismans tell the past who listens tales without it turn out my true wish is world peace mine leonetruish in fact for world peace school life is like duckweed school life is like duckweed school if I like duckweed drifting and drifting meeting and parting chasing the dream all the way chasing thedrium that's fair in front remembering the elves I caught in my childhood recall the ilvest hadiokautaseung kid remembering the embarrassing scenes of those years recalled Hosea Dyer send time is Sophia yours, holding hands and looking up hold me hand raise your head I have seen every year's brocade see the splendor of feature do not look back with rhythm don't look back Yusathabite ballad of the immortal sing the mortal s ballad strut with head up and chest out walk ahead keep your head high as long as you ifioera here fate will not get out of hand I will never loss me. Chapter 755. The sudden appearance of the sword spirit left Wang Ming and Ghost Head Blade dumbfounded. Logically speaking, as an ordinary person without spirit energy, it was almost impossible for Wang Ming to give birth to a sword spirit with his mortal body. But even Ghost Head Blade couldn't find a reasonable explanation for what had just happened. This was the daily life of the immortal king, not the diary of a cohabitation with a sword spirit. Could it really be his birthday halo? For a moment, Wang Ming felt that this explanation actually wasn't unreasonable. After all, Wang Ling would always give Wang Ling a present in advance on his birthday in the past. At this summer camp, he had deliberately pulled Wang Ling into the same room as him, which was in fact a hint that Wang Ling could give him a present. But after waiting for a long time, Wang Ling still hadn't given him a present. In this unusual situation, Wang Ming actually had a feeling that Wang Ling might have arranged for this sword spirit to automatically attach itself to his heavenly materials sword on his birthday. Because Wang Ming himself clearly remembered telling Wang Ling a while ago that he was improving the heavenly materials sword. At that time, the summer camp hadn't started yet, so if this sword spirit had really been sent by Wang Ling, he indeed had plenty of time to make arrangements. Thinking this, Wang Ming cupped his chin and carefully sized up the long-haired young man in front of him. Suddenly, he remembered the self-introduction of this sword spirit with dead fish eyes. Wait, you said you're called Kun Shan. The young man nodded. That was my name in my previous life. The new Lord Sword Master can call me Heavenly Materials. The name of a sword spirit follows the name of the Sword Master's sword. You actually remember your previous life? Wang Ming was startled. He looked at the dark blue spirit sword in his hand. He remembered that it was called Kun Shan. It couldn't be such a coincidence, right? Of course I remember. The young man sighed. In my previous life, the previous sword master tricked me and I unfortunately fell into the dead sea of space. Now that I've been summoned by Heavenly Tao to meet the new Lord Sword Master, I never thought that we would still be in this vast ocean. It seems that this really is fate. May I ask if Lord Sword Master is traveling right now? No, Wang Ming shook his head. Look carefully, this is the Dead Sea of Space. The young man, Heavenly Materials seemed to have suffered a blow, and didn't speak for a long time. He just gazed at the boundless Dead Sea of Space with watery eyes, his expression a little sad, as if the memory of his previous life had just happened yesterday. The memories of the sword spirit would not disappear. Destroying itself was equivalent to abandoning the original sword master. The calamity of falling into the Heavenly Tao's reincarnation was the punishment of the Heavenly Tao. He had experienced the calamity of reincarnation for more than 100 years before he was finally freed and reborn. Who would have thought that he would go such a big circle and come back? Heavenly materials of heavenly materials a heaven. After all, heave. After Wang of heaved heavens, Ming, Tian of God. Wang of God, Ming Ling, sword cultivator, Ming. Chen. Wang, Ming Ming of king, Ming. Master, Chen. Chen. Ming 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 spirit to. He. Ming, blade, sword. Ming. Ling. Ling, he, Ghost Head Blade instantly gave off a sinister and ferocious aura. Heavenly Materials shrugged. I don't think I can. Wang Ming, so, you'd better stay alive. Heavenly Materials, however, Wang Ming also noticed a very interesting phenomenon. Although they both had dead fish eyes, it seemed that the less they spoke, the stronger they were. In the blink of an eye, half a day had passed. Wang Ming had already assembled more and more parts from the broken magic treasures on the surface of the sea, and put them all away in his storage ring. Help me cut this. Wang Ming gave a rice cooker magic treasure that he had fished up to Heavenly Materials. There was a broken talisman seal on it, and Wang Ming speculated that it was probably some kind of sealing magic treasure. Because of Heavenly Materials' appearance, the cutting speed of the item was greatly increased, which just so happened to solve Wang Ming's urgent problem. Heavenly Materials' appearance wasn't completely useless. Although Ghost Head Blade didn't say anything, he had been watching from the side the whole time. Every time he asked Wang Ming about the progress, Wang Ming would say that it was almost done. Ghost Head Blade needed to wait for Wang Ming to assemble the thing before he made his move. Although the rice cooker that he had fished up was already broken, it contained what Wang Ming wanted the most. He wanted to transform it into a hub that could be embedded with a spirit power core, and use the hub as a power source to finally control the entire machine. What he wanted to invent wasn't just a spirit power amplifier. Instead, it was a humanoid, wearable magic treasure similar to Head of State 001. But Wang Ming felt that even if he invented this machine, it could only be used once at most, because he had calculated many of the parameters on the design blueprint in his head. It wasn't that he wasn't confident in his mental calculations, but that the best way to assemble such a complicated machine was to use scientific equipment to make precise deductions, and only after repeated calculations hundreds of times would a better result be achieved. Now, Wang Ming could only ensure that the machine he had invented was as durable as possible, and that it would be able to weather the storm. After all, the materials he had collected now weren't afraid of the spatial spirit liquid's corrosion, and would have no problem withstanding the spatial storm. In any case, it was fine as long as they could leave this dead sea of space. Time ticked by. At that moment, Ghost Head Blade finally sensed that something wasn't right. He had seen the blueprint for the spirit power amplification cannon which Wang Ming had provided him, and there weren't as many parts on it as there were now. Although he didn't know what these parts were for or what they were used for, Ghost Head Blade felt that he could still count them. His math teacher had died early, and he himself wasn't very educated, but he still knew 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Brat, what on earth are you playing at? The small pitch-black blade was already floating in the air, emitting a frightening pressure. While Wang Ming had been assembling the machine, Ghost Head Blade hadn't been idle either. He had been adjusting his breathing all this time. The spirit energy in the dead sea of space was very thin, but it wasn't non-existent. After such a long time, Ghost Head Blade had recovered a lot. Done. Just as Ghost Head Blade asked this question, Wang Ming had finished bottling the last part, the spirit power hub. Heavenly treasure. Cover me. At that moment, Wang Ming got up and inserted the ring which contains spirit energy into the spirit power hub. In the next moment, countless parts flew out of the ring and, as if they had been given life, wrapped Wang Ming up tightly from head to toe. Heavenly treasure turned pale with fright. Lord Sword Master, he knew that Wang Ming was just an ordinary person, but when Wang Ming had been assembling the machine just now, Heavenly Treasure had also noticed something special about him. It turned out that his sword master wasn't ordinary at all, but a genuine genius. Damn it, how dare you lie to me? You didn't make an amplification cannon at all. Ghost Head Blade finally realized that he had been deceived, and flew into a rage as he prepared to attack Wang Ming. No, I did. Wang Ming smiled and shook his head. He had indeed made a spirit power amplification cannon, but he had put it in the form of parts on the left and right arms of his mecha armor. How is that possible? You're just a mortal. How can you defeat a cultivator? Ghost Head Blade roared. I'm no longer Wang Ming. Wang Ming stared at Ghost Head Blade, his expression instantly turning cold. I am. Nuhulu Wang Ming. That was it. At that moment, Wang Ming raised his right arm. An automatic aiming lens had already appeared out of thin air in his eye sockets. Everything was done in one go. This mecha armor had an automatic mechanism to identify killing intent, and it almost instantly locked onto Ghosthead Blade. At that moment, Ghosthead Blade was actually so frightened that he froze. Chapter 756. Ghosthead Blade had never felt this intense sense of crisis before Wang Ming made his appearance in full armor. Even in his current injured state, Wang Ming was just an ant that Ghosthead Blade could crush at any time he wanted in his normal state. Wang Ming was very smart, but in the end, he was just an ordinary person, so it wasn't a big deal. This was what Ghosthead Blade had always thought before Wang Ming was fully armed. But as it turned out, Ghosthead Blade's attitude was still a little too arrogant. Nowadays, in the era of national cultivation, those cultivators with a certain level of cultivation always had a contemptuous attitude towards ordinary people, and the number of such cultivators was actually not small, almost half of the population. Hence, as an ordinary person, Wang Ming was teaching cultivators like Ghosthead Blade, who looked down on ordinary people, a lesson. Knowledge was power. Knowledge could indeed change one's fate. Take this. Following Wang Ming's roar, the aiming lens had already locked onto Ghosthead Blade with precision. Although Ghosthead Blade was currently just a blade and was very small, Wang Ming had already considered this factor long ago, and had changed the Spirit Power Amplification Cannon into a Spirit Power Amplification Tracking Cannon. No need to hold your breath. No need to cheat. It could also automatically lock onto you. Identify killing intent. Self-aim for a headshot. But because the recoil of this cannon was extremely strong, the moment it was fired, Wang Ming's entire body was swiftly sent flying backward. This clumsy assembly of magic treasures was made from waste magic treasures from the Dead Sea of Space, and the weight of the materials in each part wasn't particularly uniform. Wang Ming had already done his best to compare the materials and find magic treasures with similar densities. Wang Ming had already done his best to compare the materials and find magic treasures of similar density, but after firing this cannon, Wang Ming was still deeply aware of the mecha armor's flaws. He would just take it as experimental data. Wang Ming was already determined that after he got out of here, he would build a second-generation mecha as soon as possible. The powerful recoil made Wang Ming's arm ache, but it was still within the limits of what he could endure. The pain was like a muscle being stretched. As he was sent flying backward by the recoil, the mecha armor's suspension stabilizer was activated at the same time. Seeing this, heavenly materials hurriedly turned into a stream of light and flew behind Wang Ming to support him against the recoil together. Accompanied by an intense wave of light, an enormous umbrella-shaped beam of light shot straight in Ghosthead Blade's direction. For a moment, the spirit power in the Dead Sea of Space surged, and the spirit liquid water instantly evaporated into clouds of steam. Ghosthead Blade realized that he couldn't dodge the cannon shot. It was a homing cannon, and the moment it fired, he was locked onto. Damn, a mere mortal also wanted to show off in front of him. Hidden Ghost Blade technique. Ghosthead Blade knew that he wouldn't be able to avoid it, so he used his blade technique and slashed at the light cannon. A dazzling purple saber gleam lit up in the void and rushed towards the light cannon, attempting to split it in half. But in the end, Ghosthead Blade had still underestimated Wang Ming's blast. He was already injured, and although he had recovered some spirit energy earlier, it had been stored up for the purpose of possessing Wang Ming's body, and the strength he had saved up was far from enough. Blade Ming of Wang Blade Ming's light cannon. In the end, this mecha armor, which had been assembled from discarded magic treasures in the Dead Sea of Space, was beyond Ghosthead Blade's imagination. In the end, this mecha armor, which had been assembled from discarded magic treasures in the Dead Sea of Space, was beyond Ghosthead Blade's imagination. Even heavenly materials behind him was amazed. His master was just an ordinary person, but had actually relied on this mecha armor to fight a cultivator who was almost at the soul formation stage. Is he dead? In the distance, Wang Ming was standing in the air by relying on the mecha armor's suspension system. Wang Ming had previously invented a flying device for himself, so he wasn't weak in terms of proficiency and balance when it came to flying. Furthermore, Wang Ming hadn't come up with this humanoid mecha armor magic treasure on a whim in the dead sea of space. The blueprint had long since been etched deeply into his mind. He had had this idea as early as when he had been researching the humanoid magic treasure head of State 001, but he had never put it into practice. Wang Ming had now relied on discarded magic treasures to assemble this mecha armor purely because he had no other choice, since he was still at the stage of collecting the materials for the real mecha armor. Apart from testing head of State 001's performance, following Wang Ling, spying on him, peeping on him, bullying him, teasing him, and asking him for a birthday present, Wang Ming's biggest goal as a teacher at the summer camp this time was to collect the main materials for the mecha armor. This had been approved by Huaxiao Alliance, and Wang Ming could freely and appropriately choose his own materials in the remains. This was a privilege which old Qi had given him, and Wang Ming still had that document stamped with his seal on it. Wang Ming gazed at the rolling steam in front of him and sighed softly. Because this mecha armor still lacked the auxiliary ability of spiritual perception, and Wang Ming himself wasn't a cultivator, he had no way of determining whether Ghost Head Blade was dead or not. But he was sure that Ghost Head Blade had definitely been severely injured by that blow just now. Even if he wasn't dead, Ghost Head Blade already didn't have the strength to struggle. In the days to come, his body was bound to disintegrate bit by bit as it soaked in the spatial spirit fluid, and his soul would then suffer the curse of the ancient artifact spirit. Heavenly Materials question confirmed Wang Ming's thoughts at the moment. Lord Sword Master, do you want to give him the last hit? He already doesn't have the strength to struggle. Forget it. Wang Ming shook his head. Actually, it wasn't that he didn't want to give him the last hit, but that blast just now had directly used up 32% of his spirit power. The spirit power hub only had 40% of its reputation left. He had to save up this spirit power to break through the space wall and get out. Thus, Wang Ming no longer paid attention to Ghost Head Blade. Instead, he flew as high as possible. If there's a space storm later, do your best to protect me. Very well, Lord Sword Master. Heavenly Materials' response was very gentle. The Master of Immortal Mansion had carefully selected and polished this material, and it was the only one in the world. It was so hard that it didn't fear a space storm at all. Then, Heavenly Materials took the initiative to hug Wang Ming's lower back, ready to resist the impact of the spirit power blast. Ready, Wang Ming took a deep breath and counted down from 3 in his heart. There was a loud bang. He raised his hand and fired the second blast at the very top of the dead sea of space. This blast was a resurrection blast, and it was also Wang Ming's oath as an ordinary person. After this blast, Wang Ming would reappear in the world with a new identity. Chapter 757. On the other side, Night Ghost's Spirit Emperor, who Wang Ling had borrowed President Qi's mental energy to possess insect envoy Long Ming and had slapped him, finally woke up from his coma. But even though he had woken up, he was in very poor condition, and didn't even have the strength to get up. This slap wasn't like the ones he had given Evil Sword God back then. Wang Ling had undone half of the talisman seal, so even if he didn't use all his strength, it was still 50%. Combined with all the slaps he had given so far, this slap was of very high quality. In terms of grades, Evil Sword God's slaps could only be classified as ordinary slaps. Further up were, slightly serious slap, very serious slap, extremely serious slap, expert appraisal slap, and ultimate Buddha's palm. And this slap just happened to reach the very serious slap level. This slap hadn't just hit his body. Even Night Ghost's Spirit Emperor's soul had been shaken, and he had suffered pain and torture. At that moment, although Night Ghost's Spirit Emperor had already woken up, he couldn't move at all. He felt as if every acupuncture point and pore had become an erupting volcano, and he was burning with pain. That kind of mental energy just now, he was sure that it was definitely Huaxiao Nation's Wisdom Saint. He was very familiar with that aura. Although he had never fought Wisdom Saint face to face before, Night Ghost Spirit Emperor believed that he had a certain understanding of him. The other party was good at using mental energy to control things from afar, and in this world, the only person who could use mental energy to this extent was Wisdom Saint. Mental energy was a kind of power that was cultivated from a young age, and was different from spirit energy. It didn't need to be used on a spirit root, but it was extremely difficult to cultivate. President Qi's actual combat ability wasn't strong, because his mental energy had already reached the pinnacle. As far as Night Ghost Spirit Emperor knew, there was no one in this world who could cultivate mental energy and spirit energy at the same time. This was the principle that you couldn't have your cake and eat it too. So although this slap had landed on Night Ghost Spirit Emperor, he had never expected it to be from Wang Ling. As he wailed endlessly, he just felt that the power of this slap was too inconceivable. Huaxiao Alliance, it seemed that he really couldn't underestimate this place. Night Ghost Spirit Emperor suddenly felt that he knew too little about the 10 generals, and that he had to investigate them in depth. He had always thought that President Qi was just a mental expert, and never expected him to have such terrifying attainments in cultivation. Night Ghost Spirit Emperor realized that he had made a mistake. Sometimes, know yourself and know your enemy, and you will emerge victorious. In this world, there were people who made mistakes every day. It wasn't too late to find out the truth now. Otherwise, when Little Sister Milk Tea was Little Sister Matcha. At that time, it would be too late to regret it. As he lay on the ground enduring the pain of the slap, Night Ghost Spirit Emperor pondered this thought-provoking thought. After about 10 minutes, there was still no movement from Night Chief. That slap had sent him too far away, and Night Ghost Spirit Emperor was now lying in the Gobi Desert. Who knew how long it would take for those idiots to find him? So in the end, Night Ghost Spirit Emperor could only think of a way to save himself. His injuries were severe, and he could only constantly release perfected immortal true Qi to heal his injuries. However, the slap just now had the effect of severely injuring him. Even if he used perfected immortal true Qi, the rate at which his injuries recovered was like a snail climbing a tree. It was a pain in the ass. Poor Night Ghost Spirit Emperor could only slowly recover from his injuries and start to try to move his fingers. In this kind of situation, he could only cast some one-handed healing spells. Thus, another 20 minutes passed. Night Ghost Spirit Emperor could finally move one of his fingers. This was the moment. Great Soul Cultivation Spell. Night Ghost Spirit Emperor only used one finger to make a seal. In a split second, with Night Ghost Spirit Emperor at its center, a deep blue magic array with complex runes appeared on the ground. Light lingered over the magic array, and countless souls hovered above Night Ghost Spirit Emperor's head to repair his soul. This Great Soul Cultivation spell was something Night Ghost Spirit Emperor had created based on the Dark Pastor collection of a foreign forbidden technique, the Bible of Darkness. In theory, it was also a forbidden technique that couldn't be recognized internationally. Its main principle was to use the souls that Night Ghost Spirit Emperor was constantly devouring to control them and turn them into his slaves to heal his soul's injuries. Once these summoned souls ran out of soul power, they would be completely annihilated. But from the moment he incorporated these souls, they had already become his slaves and were pawns that he could discard at any time. Night Ghost Spirit Emperor closed his eyes and enjoyed the comfort of these souls being repaired. Although he was now lying on the ground in the Gobi Desert, it felt like he was in an outdoor spa. A moment later, Night Ghost Spirit Emperor's arms and hands were mostly healed, and he could already move. He made another seal and checked his soul warehouse, which contained all the souls he had devoured over the last 100 years. That's right, that brat Bai Zhe. Night Ghost Spirit Emperor suddenly smiled sinisterly as he thought of President Bai. He had just devoured President Bai's soul a while ago, and he still remembered that President Bai's ability to recover was extremely strong. Just in time, I'll use Bai Zhe's soul to help my venerable self recover. Night Ghost Spirit Emperor's wishful thinking was very good. Thus, when his soul was almost 20 to 30% healed, he summoned someone from his soul warehouse. Bai Zhe, come out, a white figure slowly appeared in front of him. This person was none other than President Bai, whom Night Ghost Spirit Emperor had devoured. It was obvious that President Bai had been tortured in the Soul Warehouse. His hair was disheveled and his cheeks were sunken in. The environment of the Soul Warehouse was similar to that of a prison. Tens of thousands of strong souls were imprisoned here, and new souls would definitely receive the so-called baptism of newbies. Bai Zhe, you look a lot more haggard. Night Ghost Spirit Emperor chuckled. You're not qualified to say that. President Bai stared at Night Ghost Spirit Emperor's sorry figure and said in an icy voice. Kneel. Night Ghost Spirit Emperor only gave the order, but President Bai's knees already couldn't help but bend down. Night Ghost Spirit Emperor raised his hand and lifted President Bai's chin with the air of someone who held great power. Now, you're my slave. No matter how sorry I look, as a soul slave, I advise you to be careful with your words. Otherwise, it wouldn't be good if you were turned to ashes. If I want to, I can throw you into the Great Soul Repairing Spells Array at any time as raw material, understand? Chapter 758. Night Ghost Spirit Emperor was lying on the ground, enjoying the massage from the Great Soul Cultivation Array's soul slave, and he had a very lazy expression on his face. President Bai was still kneeling in front of him. Originally, I only wanted to keep you in the Soul Vault and wait for the opportunity to digest you and obtain your recovery ability. However, I've changed my mind. Do you know why? Night Ghost Spirit Emperor suddenly said. President Bai pursed his lips and said nothing. After waiting for a while, Night Ghost Spirit Emperor could only answer his own question. The Bai clan's creation art is #1 in the world. It's as famous as the Toya clan's unusual elixir technique and the Shao clan's alchemy technique. If I hadn't taken you in as my subordinate, you would have been executed by your clansmen. Later, with my help, you inherited the orthodoxy of the White Clan, which is why you have your current status. President Bai's face instantly darkened. Your Excellency, what do you want to say? If I devour your soul and seize your technique, I will instantly know all the memories in your mind. However, I personally saved you back then, so I really can't bear to kill you now. Although you've made a huge mistake this time, I still plan to spare your life on account of our past friendship. If I hadn't used the 10,000 Li soul chase to keep your soul, how long do you think you could have lasted against that young man? Night Ghost Spirit Emperor said. President Bai was instantly speechless. Even his body began to tremble uncontrollably. Ever since he had been beaten by Wang Ling, he would suffer from this kind of aftereffect from time to time. Every time he thought of it, it was fear. Night Ghost Spirit Emperor smiled softly and crooked his finger, and a white jade scroll appeared in the air. President Bai took it with both hands, and was amazed to find that he could actually directly touch the scroll as a soul. This is a soul book, an item used to communicate with spirit bodies. Night Ghost Spirit Emperor said, I want you to write down the cultivation method of the creation art on this jade scroll, word for word. President Bai finally knew what Night Ghost Spirit Emperor was going to do, and his expression instantly froze. This is my Bai clan's secret technique. I knew that this was a secret magic of your White Clan. But do you have any other choice? Night Ghost Spirit Emperor smiled sinisterly. I know you expected me to lock your soul after you died, and then find a chance to devour you. That's why you put a curse on your soul, didn't you? President Bai was speechless. His curse had been very discreet, but he hadn't expected Night Ghost Spirit Emperor to still see through it. But back then, this curse hadn't been deliberately aimed at President Bai. Anyone who destroyed his soul would be cursed. President Bai had initially thought that if he was defeated in his battle with that youngster and that the latter wouldn't let go of his soul, he would at least be able to cast a curse on the youngster, so that he would be plagued with calamities and misfortune, which could be considered revenge for what he had done to him. As for Night Ghost Spirit Emperor's imagination, it was actually reasonable. Although this curse wasn't meant to be cast on Night Ghost Spirit Emperor, it was in fact meant to guard against him. Thus, when he had cast the curse back then, President Bai had already thought of many subsequent possibilities. Baizhi, you are indeed clever. But compared to me, he's still a bit too inexperienced. Of course, as long as you clearly write down the Bai clan's creation art, word for word, I can let bygones be bygones. I can even reconstruct your body and spare your dog life. Night Ghost Spirit Emperor raised his hand and a soul brush fell, his tone brooking no refusal. So, write it. President Bai took a deep breath. He had no way to argue, and could only do it. The creation art was a new spell developed during the Bai clan's heyday back then, and was later revered as the clan's ancestral secret skill. In the clan, President Bai was originally just a son of a concubine, and had never had the opportunity to learn. His mother had a lowly status and was just a favored songstress. Even after her death, she couldn't enter the clan's ancestral hall, and the memorial tablet could only be placed in President Bai's room. As he wrote down this secret skill, Baizhi recalled his experience when he had first met Night Ghost Spirit Emperor. At that time, Night Chief had just started out, and Night Ghost Spirit Emperor had been recruiting people everywhere. That was when the Bai clan's internal strife happened. As for why Night Ghost Spirit Emperor had chosen him in the end, President Bai had been investigating for the last 100 years, and had finally learned the truth. Your Excellency, I'm done. Baizhi quickly presented the jade scroll. The creation of a spell was nothing more than a few core nomological formulas. Night Ghost Spirit Emperor had a high opinion of himself, and if he wrote down everything, the other party would be displeased. So Baizhi just wrote down the core formula for the spell on the scroll, which made Night Ghost Spirit Emperor's eyes light up. The basic formula for a spell was the same, and only the core nomological formulas were the quintessence. This was like writing the universal chord in a musical melody, 4-5-3-6-2-5-1. Night Ghost Spirit Emperor was very satisfied with President Bai's performance. Baizhi, you're a smart man. Your Excellency praises me too much. President Bai's face was expressionless as he knelt on the ground like a slave obediently obeying his master's orders, as obedient as a puppy. Night Ghost Spirit Emperor sighed endlessly at this scene. He had chosen Baizhi back then because he had taken a fancy to Baizhi's rebellious nature. Who would have thought that after being thrown into the soul repository, this nature would be worn away instead? Night Ghost Spirit Emperor stared at this scene, his heart filled with disappointment and frustration. Actually, this was also good. At the very least, he now had another reason to keep Baizhi alive. At that moment, Night Ghost Spirit Emperor's soul injury had already recovered by nearly 40%, and he already had the strength. He got up from the ground and started to learn the core formula for the creation art which Baizhi had given him. A true immortal expert could learn spells at an extremely heaven-defying speed. Especially someone as experienced as Night Ghost Spirit Emperor, who only needed a few glances to break down these formulas, memorize them, and learn them at the speed of light. A torrent of blue spirit energy turned into steam and rose from Night Ghost Spirit Emperor's 7 orifices. Is this the Bai clan's creation art? Night Ghost Spirit Emperor was overjoyed. His injuries really were recovering at a rapid pace. But this state of joy didn't last long, as Night Ghost Spirit Emperor soon discovered that something was wrong. Although the injuries to his skin, flesh, tendons, and bones were rapidly healing, the injuries to his soul seemed to be on the verge of breaking apart. All of a sudden, Night Ghost Spirit Emperor's vision went black, and his entire body felt weak and exhausted. At that moment, President Bai finally stood up and smiled. Lord Spirit Emperor, is my Bai clan's creation art still useful? Night Ghost Spirit Emperor finally realized the reason for this abnormality. He glared at President Bai with wide, angry eyes. What did you do? Back then, Your Excellency viewed the Bai clan as a great threat. You only kept me as your loyal dog and purged the rest of the clan. But before you purged my ancestor, Your Excellency should have carefully investigated my Bai clan's history. Hands behind his back, President Bai had a smug expression on his face. Has Your Excellency heard of the reverse polarity? Night Ghost Spirit Emperor seemed to think of something, and finally looked alarmed. This Baizhi, as expected, he was evil. Chapter 759. On the other side, Wang Ming's second shot was a success, which had used up 28% of his spirit power reserves. Now, he only had 12% left, which he had to use to break through the space wall and fight his way out. A space fissure appeared, and at the same time, Wang Ming's mecha armor gave him a system prompt: space fissure ahead, estimated time until fissure closes, 243 seconds. Remaining energy, 12%, this was the mecha armor's built-in computing system, but it wasn't artificial intelligence at all. If it could be combined with a satellite design, it would be even more humane and intelligent. But for now, Wang Ming could only do this with the junk from the Dead Sea of Space. Just as the system had said, although the spatial rift had opened, it wouldn't last for long. This was the best time to rush out. You are not allowed to leave. Just as he was about to move, Ghosthead Blade's angry roar came from below. There was a flash of light as Ghosthead Blade made a show of using the last bit of his strength to keep Wang Ming here. Your Excellency Sword Master, leave quickly. I'll cover the rear. Heavenly Materials pushed Wang Ming forward. That won't do. If you want to leave, we'll leave together. Wang Ming grabbed Heavenly Material. He knew that Heavenly Material's former self was Kun Shan, a pitiful sword spirit who had been cheated by his master and had sunk into silence in the Dead Sea of Space for 100 years. In the end, he had been so lonely that he had self-destructed. Wang Ming really couldn't bear to leave Heavenly Material here. But there was no more time to think about it. Just at that moment, another space fissure appeared in the air, and a snow-white stream of light swiftly streaked past Wang Ming's eyes before finally striking Ghosthead Blade with unerring accuracy. Ah! Ghosthead Blade let out a miserable howl of pain. Wang Ming, Heavenly Materials, what was that? Someone had crushed Ghosthead Blade to death. Moreover, this stream of light did not seem to be a spell, but a concealed weapon. Unfortunately, this mysterious expert's attack was just too fast. The current mecha's ability was completely unable to capture and locate the hidden weapon's image. Heavenly Materials was quick to react. He swept up a sword chi and grabbed at the void. His hands were immediately stained with some white powder. Heavenly Materials frowned, feeling that this thing was a bit like chalk dust. Could it be young Masterling? Heavenly Materials suddenly asked. Wang Ming, do you know my little brother? Heavenly Materials smiled faintly, reporting to the Sword Master, after I became the sword spirit of this sword, I became the sword spirit of this sword. From the day this sword was successfully forged, everything that happened has been sealed in my mind as a memory. This shouldn't be my brother's doing. Wang Ming shook his head. If it had been my younger brother, he would have been even more ruthless. This Ghosthead Blade probably wouldn't even have been able to scream before he died on the spot. Heavenly Materials, Wang Ming raised his eyebrows. No matter who the mysterious person was, he had no time to worry about it now. The most important thing right now is to get out of here. Thinking this, Wang Ming raised his eyes and operated the mecha armor side by side with Heavenly Materials as they plunged into the space fissure. At the same time, in the real remains, the living cells that had fled earlier had almost all been cleaned up. Fortunately, Wu Zhenjuan had given timely instructions this time, and the inside of the remains hadn't suffered too much damage. However, the aftermath of Night Chief's actions this time would be immeasurable, and what they really needed to guard against were the international gossip that would follow. Devil Valley's Beast King's remains, this feng shui treasure land had long been eyed by various countries. Now that something had happened, Mishio Nation definitely wouldn't let go of this opportunity, and would appeal to the international community to set up a joint army to manage it. In the dense forest to the east of Beast King's remains, Odshua's special operations team had cleaned up almost half of the living cells. That was because they had Wuji on their side, who was like a living human radar. It was too easy for her to sense the summoned cells that had fled. Wu Zhenjuan, I've finished cleaning up here and executed these living cells on the spot. But how do you think we should deal with these corpses? In the rainbow glass box, Wu Zhenjuan quickly replied, Thank you for your hard work, Director Zhua. These cell corpses don't need any special treatment, they contain a lot of organic matter, which can be used as fertilizer. I see. Jua nodded. Wu Zhenjuan nodded. Also, we just detected a strange spatial fluctuation in the west, but we're not sure if it has anything to do with Teacher Wang's disappearance. Can Director Zhuo lead a team to check it out? The teachers we sent out previously have been ordered by the higher-ups to summon them back for the meeting. If Director Zhuo can't go, I can only send someone over the next day. Zhuo hurriedly replied, Wu Zhenjuan, what are you talking about? Since we're the special operations team, we naturally have a reason to take action. Saving people is like fighting a fire. Wu Zhenjuan was overjoyed. In that case, thank you very much, Director Zhuo. After the call ended, Zhuo looked at the people around him. Wu Zhenjuan said that he detected spatial fluctuations in the west of the remains, and suspects that they have something to do with Lord Wang Ming. I also felt the fluctuations not long after they appeared. Wu Ji frowned. When she detected abnormal fluctuations, the bandages on her face would tighten, and when the space was normal, the bandages would appear a little looser. Wu Ji herself hadn't noticed this phenomenon, but Fatty Luo had long ago noticed it, and had told Zhuo about it. As a somewhat famous weaponsmith, Fatty Luo's ability to observe magic artifacts was exceptionally accurate. It was only Wu Ji herself who hadn't realized the change in the bandages on her face. It seemed that the spatial fluctuations were indeed real. Considering what Wu Ji had said before, Wang Ming might have been sucked into the Dead Sea of Space. If he wasn't in danger, the Dead Sea of Space would definitely spit him back out as a foreign object. Therefore, the abnormal spatial fluctuations might really have been caused by the space Wang Ming had been spat out. Let's go take a look. Zhuo didn't hesitate in the slightest. Right now, the only ones who could move freely in the remains were their special operations team. Furthermore, they now had a legitimate reason to search the western part of the remains. Apart from finding out whether that spatial fluctuation was Wang Ming's or not, they now had a legitimate reason to search the western part of the remains. Apart from finding out whether the spatial fluctuations belonged to Wang Ming, they could finally achieve their true objective. Because according to Little Silver, Devil King's tomb had been placed in the western part of the remains back then, and if they found this tomb, they might be able to find out the real reason why Devil King had been eaten in his sleep back then. All these years, there had been rumors in the outside world that Devil King hadn't really died. Whether this was a rumor or the truth would only be known after further investigation. Inside the rainbow glass box, the summer camp had been forced to stop because of the riot in the evening. It was now dinner time, and the students from several schools were discussing this matter. Even Li Mingyao and Zhou Yuzheng, who had been searching for Wang Ling earlier, had temporarily forgotten to look for him. In a restaurant, Wang Ling, Little Peanut, Super Chen and Dopey Guo were sitting at a table. Did you hear? Someone saw a mysterious person appear when the sea and sky spell formation was activated, and scared away the summoned creatures that came out of the spell formation. Bullshit again. Why are there so many metaphysical things? You don't know, but I heard that Senior Zhuo also came this time, and as a member of the special operations team. That mysterious person might be Senior Zhuo, Dopey Guo said with a shrug. Wang Ling raised his eyebrows. It was very obvious which uncle had provided this information. Isn't there a saying that, there's no peace in this world, but some people carry our burdens from behind the scenes? On the other side, Super Chen also chimed in. Ha, a mysterious person made a move. I'd rather believe that Wang Ling climbed a tree. Chapter 760. Wearing the fully equipped humanoid mecha armor, Wang Ming broke through the space wall and was finally freed from the Dead Sea of Space as a space fissure suddenly opened and spat him out. He examined the surrounding terrain. This was a completely unfamiliar environment, but the only thing he was sure of was that he was still inside the remains. Wang Ming had done some homework before coming to the remains. He was now near a lake surrounded by strange spirit plants. These were all extinct resources, and he couldn't be wrong about them. It looks like we're still inside the remains, and in the western half at that. We have to contact someone as soon as possible. Wang Ming got up from the ground and put away the humanoid mecha armor. After passing through the storm, the mecha armor only had 3% of its spirit power left. Furthermore, it was damaged to a certain extent, and would be completely scrapped after one more use at most. But even if this mecha armor was completely scrapped, Wang Ming didn't plan to throw it away, he wanted to frame it for his collection. After all, this was the first mecha armor that had saved his life at a critical moment. We have to think of a way to get out of here. Wang Ming surveyed his surroundings. He wasn't sure how much time had passed in the outside world after he had been sucked into the dead sea of space. He knew that time flowed differently in different spaces, but he hadn't done any research on the specific differences. It can't be that everyone has left, right? Wang Ming didn't think he would be so unlucky. The main thing was that he didn't believe that Wang Ling would abandon him. Their brotherhood had been verified by cultivation socialism, and it definitely wasn't just so-called brothers on the surface. This time, this stupid old Daodu had chosen to give him a sword spirit on his birthday. Maybe Wang Ling had already foreseen this calamity, but he hadn't taken the initiative to make a move, so Wang Ming felt that Wang Ling was probably being restrained by something. Wang Ming clearly remembered what Wang Ling had said about the checks and balances of the heavenly Tao. If you forcefully interfered with someone else's fate, it often didn't end well. Lord Sword Master, do you want this humble servant to find someone? Heavenly Materials asked very seriously as he stood solemnly on one side. Don't do that. My mecha armor is pretty much scrapped now, and it's severely lacking in spirit power. What will I do if you leave? Wang Ming sighed. Soon after, he sat down on the ground and stared at the lake in front of him. Just wait. I feel that someone will come looking for me. As soon as Wang Ming said this, Heavenly Materials sensed a strange fluctuation in the air. Lord Sword Master, it seems that something is coming out. Then, a crack opened up. Thump 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 thump, several figures smashed directly into the lake through the air, and the water they kicked up splashed Wang Ming's face. Wang Ming, Odd Zhua and the others swam ashore and narrowed their eyes at Wuji with a slightly resentful expression. Wuji was the only one who didn't get wet because she could teleport within a short distance. Thus, when she was about to fall into the lake, she moved herself away. When Odd Zhua came ashore, Wuji put on a grim expression. I'm so sorry. The spatial positioning was right here, but he didn't expect to teleport to a lake. This was a technical error. Don't burn me with the fire of purification. Strange Shua, Fatty Luo and Little Silver, Wuji had deliberately mentioned the fire of purification, so Odd Zhua instantly understood that this girl was taking revenge. He had threatened Wuji with the fire of purification before to make her listen to him. Who would have thought that this girl would hold a grudge, but Odd Zhua felt that this was only limited to outsiders. If his Shifu was present, Wuji would definitely be the most well-behaved. Overall, the impact of this act of revenge wasn't too great. They were all wearing Taoist robes which had the ability to self-purify, and when wet, would quickly dry themselves in just a few seconds. Thus, Odd Zhua ignored his wet clothes as he stepped forward and excitedly grasped Wang Ming's hand. I knew it, Mr. Ming was indeed still alive. Praised, Wang Ming's face was full of pride. This is all basic. But it's all thanks to Heavenly Materials for covering for me, otherwise I wouldn't have been able to shake off that ghost head blade. Odd Zhua looked at Heavenly Materials standing next to Wang Ming. He had already noticed earlier that this was a sword spirit. Looks like this is Shifu's birthday present for you. Odd Zhua looked Heavenly Materials up and down and felt that those dead fish eyes were too conspicuous, as if they were a symbol that had been passed down from his Shifu. As expected of a birthday present from Shifu, it still had a strong personal touch, and one look was enough to tell that it was a gift from him. Wang Ming hadn't been sure whether it was Wang Ling who had given Heavenly Materials to him before, but now that he had received confirmation from Odd Zhua himself, his face instantly lit up with joy. This Odudu of his might be a little stupid, but as expected, he hadn't doted on him for nothing. As they conversed on the spot, Wang Ming gave them a general account of his experience in the Dead Sea of Space. When he heard that a mysterious person had tried to stop Ghost Head Blade when they had finally left the Dead Sea of Space, Audra frowned. Mr. Ming said that someone used a hidden weapon to stop Ghost Head Blade. Audra rubbed his chin. He had to remember this and find an opportunity to report it. In order to make it easier for Audra to take the blame, Wang Ling's actions had been coordinated with Audra's, so Audra was certain that the person who had used a hidden weapon definitely wasn't his Shifu. But as for who it was, that would require further investigation. Sure enough, there were hidden dragons and crouching tigers among the teachers this time, and it looked like there were a lot of hidden experts among them. What do you plan to do next, Teacher Wang? This was the first time Dharmaraja had come into direct contact with Wang Ming. Although he had heard the name before, this was his first time truly understanding Wang Ming. Especially after learning that this young man's true identity was Ling Jinren's older brother, Dharmaraja was especially respectful of Wang Ming. Now that everyone outside thinks I'm already dead, it's a good opportunity for me to relax. I want to explore Devil King's tomb with you. Wang Ming shrugged and stared at Dharmaraja. Are you a smith? My humble self is Luo Chuang. Dharmaraja nodded and directly introduced himself. Oh, so it's you. Wang Ming immediately had an impression. He remembered that Fatty Luo had been the one who had maintained Grandfather Wang's kitchen knife and sheep's tricycle. Furthermore, when they had gone to Winter City to destroy Immortal Mansion's headquarters, Wang Ming remembered that a smith with the surname Luo had also participated in the operation. You should have materials on you, right? Wang Ming asked. Yes, Teacher Wang. Fatty Luo nodded and directly summoned Rolling Wheels. Teacher Wang, let me give you a grand introduction to my ride, Rolling Wheels. The toolbox in Rolling Wheels has all the materials you need for refining weapons, and there's also a mechanical arm modeled after Lord Jinka's hand. It was a pity that a smith was a freak. Wang Ming, do you have a tool to identify materials? Fatty Luo nodded. Yes. This mechanical arm had a simulated tongue made in Lord Jinka's human form, and this tongue could lick any material. As long as this tongue laps any material, it can analyze the structure of the material. Let me give you an example. After saying that, Fatty Luo put his hand into his underpants. Wang Ming was startled. Damn! What are you doing? Audra, Little Silver and Wuji, Fatty Luo felt around in his underpants and then took out a small hammer. Teacher Wang, don't misunderstand, I'm just habitually hiding things in the storage space inside my underpants. Wang Ming. Then, Fatty Luo turned on the simulated tongue. He put the hammer in front of the tongue and gave it a very perverted smile as he instructed, lick it. Chapter 761. Wang Ming had long known that Fatty Luo was a somewhat famous smith, but this just happened to confirm a rumor. The more outstanding an elite was in a certain field, the more they would more or less have some quirks that others didn't know about. It looked like this Fatty Luo wasn't just a sword Linkong, he was also a die-hard fan of Jinka. At this rate, he was going to become a Seising fan. Hence, Wang Ming patted Fatty Luo on the shoulder and said in an unusually sincere tone, that Brother Luo, don't you think you might be a little perverted? Fatty Luo scratched his head, his big belly shaking, and there was a very strange expression on his face. What's wrong with a man being a little perverted? Wang Ming, Audra, Little Silver and Wuji. This guy was hopeless. Wang Ming waved his hand and didn't argue with Fatty Luo anymore. A gentleman had to do the right thing. Wang Ming decided to use his gentlemanly behavior to influence Fatty Luo and turn him from the perverted path to the right, so that he wouldn't sink even deeper. Otherwise, when that happened, Fatty Luo would truly be consigned to eternal damnation. He definitely couldn't let that happen. Thus, Wang Ming sighed in his heart and said to Fatty Luo, come help me. I also have the blueprints for the mecha armor, it should be faster if we work together. How long will it take? Little Silver asked. 10 or 20 minutes, Wang Ming said. Fatty Luo now had all the materials and could be Wang Ming's assistant. Most importantly, the first mecha armor hadn't been completely scrapped yet, which was the most crucial point. After they left the remains, Wang Ming would definitely use the Research Institute's equipment to develop a second-generation mecha armor. But because he currently lacked the relevant computing equipment, he could only make some basic repairs based on the first mecha armor. Furthermore, after the battle with Ghost Head Blade just now, Wang Ming felt that it was necessary to modify the data of the spirit power cannons on his left and right arms after a test. Especially in the area of recoil. He had to avoid being sent flying in the opposite direction every time he fired the cannons. Next to the tranquil lake, Odd Zhua and the others waited for Wang Ming and Fatty Luo to work together to repair the first mecha armor. Odd Zhua had only replied to Wang Ling that Wang Ming had been found. The others hadn't received any news so far, because it would still be a long time before they reached the area with the abnormal space fluctuations. However, they used Wuji's space shift ability and instantly arrived at the coordinates. If he reported at this time, it would inevitably arouse suspicion. Thus, Odd Zhua felt that it would be better to wait for a while before saying it. Roughly 10 minutes later, Wang Ming took off his goggles and got up from his crouching position. It's been repaired. Curious, Odd Zhua and Little Silver leaned over to take a look and saw that the ground was littered with spare parts of the first prototype, while Wang Ming was holding a palm-sized disc in his hand. This disc glowed faintly, and was none other than the core hub of the energy storage ring. Previously, Wang Ming had already connected the core hub to Rolling Wheel to replenish its spirit power. Rolling Wheel had its own light energy system, and as long as there was light, its spirit power would recover bit by bit. So when Wang Ming extracted spirit power, he didn't hold back at all. Watch me. Wang Ming grinned and connected the core hub to the connector on his chest. Then, as if they had been given life, the spare parts scattered on the ground swiftly gathered around him and covered him. As expected of Teacher Wang, this is the first time I've seen this kind of intelligent mecha armor. Fatty Luo clicked his tongue in wonder. Wang Ming, it's nothing. Fatty Luo, does this mecha armor have a name? Wang Ming, yes, the first prototype Wang Ling 1. Odd Zhua was startled. Wang Ling 1. That's right. Wang Ming nodded. I gained new inspiration from Brother Luo's mechanical arm, and strengthened the durability of Wang Ling 1's arms to ensure that when I fire the spirit power cannon, my own arms won't be in severe pain. Apart from this, I also added a recoil corrector and a dead fisheye laser. Now, my eyes can fire spirit power laser cannons. Of course. These aren't what I'm most proud of. What I'm most proud of is Wang Ling 1's tongue. As soon as he said this, Wang Ming straightaway operated the mecha armor to stick out its tongue. I was also inspired by Brother Luo. But unlike Brother Luo's tongue ability to identify materials, I've added a new function based on Brother Luo's. By the way, after I stuck out my tongue just now, did you feel the urge to hit me? Yes. Odd Zhua nodded, his cheeks beaded with sweat. He had indeed felt that way. He had almost been unable to restrain the urge to punch Wang Ling 1 just now. For some reason, he felt that after Wang Ling 1 stuck out its tongue, it was especially asking for a beating. Wang Ming, this is mocking me. I added a visual capture device to my tongue, and this device sends a mocking signal to the brain. You can also think of it as mocking a group by sticking out its tongue. Everyone, Fatty Luo was utterly astonished by Wang Ming's invention, and directly asked Wang Ming the same question he had asked before, Teacher Wang, don't you think you might be a little perverted? Perhaps. Wang Ming nodded. But my perversion is clearly different from yours. Fatty Luo. Wang Ming, you're a covert pervert, but I'm a blatant one. Do you dare call your mechanical arm Jinka 1? Fatty Luo sucked in a cold breath. Odd Zhua, Little Silver and Wuji, a chubby figure appeared in the depths of the jungle to the east of Beast King's remains. After a short while, a black shadow landed behind him. Senior brother, the black shadow said. Is everything settled? I've already rescued the children who fainted in the chaos, so my whereabouts shouldn't have been exposed. That's good. Old Antique nodded. Then, he turned around and looked at Taoist Taotai. I've already personally cleaned up that ghost head blade for our sect, and wasted one of my void chalks. He should have been our third junior brother, but in the end, he went astray. Killing 10,000 people was just a test of our sect's wits. I'm guessing that he didn't get the complete secret manual, and missed the second half. In a while, I'll personally investigate Ghost Head Blade's former residence and retrieve the secret manual so that it doesn't fall into someone else's hands. Taoist Taotai also felt that this was a great pity. By the way, what do you think of that mysterious senior brother? Chapter 762. After Wang Ming's mecha armor was repaired, they were finally ready to set out for Beast King's tomb. Because the western region hadn't been completely explored yet, Beast King's tomb hadn't been discovered yet. Furthermore, according to Little Silver, even if the western region was completely explored, Beast King's tomb might not be discovered. Back then, Devil King had put a lot of thought into the design of the tomb to avoid having his grave dug up after his death, and the entrance to the tomb was especially difficult to find. Little Silver sat cross-legged on the ground, enjoying the rare tranquility of Devil Valley. His long silver hair swayed gently in the wind, speckled with starlight, as if he had been draped in a river of stars. On top of that, he had an extremely fair and clean face. Little Silver was usually very lively, but at that moment, he was unusually quiet. Odd Chua felt that Little Silver was like a quiet fairy. Ah! No! Little Silver was a boy. Odd Chua shook his head as he tried to snap out of his deep reverie. He felt that it really wasn't strange at all that Mother Wang had mistaken Little Silver for a girl. Silver unicorns were a noble race among holy beasts and had a very unique temperament. Furthermore, they symbolized the power of extreme yin, so even male silver unicorns had a feminine beauty when they took human form. So Little Silver couldn't be blamed for this. Odd Jewel was suddenly a little curious about how beautiful those magnetic silver unicorns could be. Presumably, their temperament wouldn't be inferior to that of an upper-class lady in the capital. A few minutes later, Little Silver opened his eyes and exhaled lightly. I found it. So fast. Is it reliable? Wuji asked. Lord Beast King racked his brains when designing the tomb. Back then, there was a famous group of tomb robbers. There were two leaders in the group, one with the surname Zhang and the other with the surname Wu. As long as they had a shovel, they would be able to dig out 18 generations of your ancestors. So Beast King's tomb was specially encrypted, and it was very difficult for human cultivators to find it. Except for holy beasts. Except for holy beasts? What do you mean? Wang Ming asked. Beast King's tomb is made of a mixture of materials, which, after being honed over time, emit a special scent that only holy beasts can smell. This is so that after His Majesty Beast King is buried, the holy beasts can go and pay their respects. But even he probably didn't expect that apart from me, all the other holy beasts had been stewed. Speaking up to this point, Little Silver's expression suddenly became a little sad. He couldn't help but recall Dog Saint and the spicy hot pot. After all, that scene was too shocking. Furthermore, Little Silver still couldn't forget the taste of the spicy hot pot. In the blink of an eye, Wuji teleported everyone to the entrance of the tomb according to the coordinates Little Silver had provided. This was a forest of Qin trees. Qin wood, also known as Emperor Wood or Emperor Tree, was the first spiritual plant in the world to change its original growth form after entering the spiritual energy era. It absorbed the spiritual energy of heaven and earth and possessed a powerful purifying power. Moreover, its vitality was extremely tenacious. The more filthy the place was, the more the purification power of the Qin wood would be manifested. It could turn the filthy things into the spiritual energy of heaven and earth and spit it out again. However, Due to the ignorance of human cultivators 1,000 years ago, there were less than 10 chin trees left in the world. Scientists were currently trying their best to study the reproduction and artificial cultivation of the chin tree. However, they were still unable to figure out how the chin tree should reproduce. This was an important topic, because the result might solve the problem of the exhaustion of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth several thousand years later. Of course, Wang Ming had also participated in this research, so he knew the chin trees very well. Hence, when he saw this forest of chin trees, he was especially shaken. There were less than 10 chin trees outside, but there was actually an entire forest of emperor trees inside Beast King's remains. Sure enough, Devil King had a mine at home. Of the 3 great divine trees back then, the Emperor Tree, the Immeasurable Tree and the Holy Sky Tree, the only one still alive in the world is this chin tree. Fatty Luo was also deeply moved. Wang Ming said, "This Emperor Tree is now a special grade protected spirit plant. It's illegal to even pick a leaf. There are actually so many of them here." Now, Wang Ming seemed to understand why all the countries were doing their best to manage the secret land of Devil Valley. This place was indeed a rich mine. This forest of chin trees alone was already worth more than trillions of immortal gold bars. Wang Ming felt that it couldn't even be measured with money. Each special grade protected spirit plant was a priceless treasure. Following Little Silver, they came to a chin tree that was so big that 20 to 30 people couldn't even wrap their arms around it. This chin tree was clearly very old and well protected. "This is the king of the trees in this forest," Little Silver said. Little Silver explained, "When there's enough chin wood in an area, a tree king will be born. The nutrients for the tree king are provided by the other chin wood in the forest. Their roots are all connected together." "Why do you know so much about chin trees?" Wang Ming was curious. Little Silver tilted his head. "Because our silver-horned beast clan grew up eating the leaves of the chin tree." Damn, Wang Ming was stupefied. Everyone, he used the mecha armor to carefully scan this huge chin tree, but in the end couldn't find the entrance. Everyone followed Little Silver around the king of the tree. Finally, Little Silver stopped at a spot, dug out a piece of bark from the chin tree, and pointed at a tiny crack. "The entrance to the tomb is here." After that, Little Silver directly cut open his own skin and dripped a drop of holy beast blood inside. Instantly, a ball of light emerged from the crack and gradually grew larger as the sound of wind and thunder whistled through the air. A powerful force was pulling everyone toward the crack. "Little Silver, don't be nervous, everyone. This is normal. Although it feels like being sucked into a space storm, it's completely different. The transmission array has already started." This burst of light that gushed out from the crack lasted for dozens of seconds. In Wang Ming's line of sight, he saw that everyone, including himself, had been broken down into specks of light by this halo of light before they were finally sucked into the crevice. The holy beast blood was the authentication code for the tomb's entrance. Just as the passage was about to close, a figure appeared. A figure appeared at this place. It was an old man, and he looked slightly flustered. He had wanted to stop them earlier, but it was already too late, and he could only watch helplessly as these people entered Beast King's tomb. "Someone's gone in." The old man sighed and spoke to the mysterious person on the other end through the transmission talisman. Chapter 763. When Little Silver's holy beast blood successfully passed the entrance verification, the group of people were sucked into the space inside Beast King's tomb. What was certain was that this definitely wasn't a technique to expand space or a small world in a crevice. The crevice in the imperial tree was just one of the entrances to the tomb. As for the specific location of Beast King's tomb, it was still a mystery. Wang Ming even started to suspect that the exact location of Beast King's tomb might not be in Devil Valley at all as they traveled through space. Perhaps the entire Devil Valley was just a smokescreen set up by Devil King. Like everyone else, Wang Ming fell through the space passage and landed on the ground of the tomb like a string of beans. "It hurts a little." Fatty Luo got up from the ground and rubbed his head. He had fallen head first just now, and a hole had been directly smashed in the ground. Wang Ming's heart turned cold at this scene. It was a good thing he was wearing mecha armor, otherwise his body would have been smashed to pieces if he had fallen like this. The Wang Ling one he was wearing now had a strong anti-fall and shock absorption ability. Although he had also fallen like this just now, he hadn't felt much pain. It could only be said that as expected of himself. Even if that stupid Ududu wasn't by his side, he could still rely on his nimble hands to make it seem as if Ududu was by his side. At this thought, Wang Ming suddenly blushed and actually became a little excited. "Teacher Wang, your mecha armor can change color." Fatty Luo stared in amazement at the mecha armor which had turned fiery red. Crap! He had forgotten that Wang Ling one had a new anthropomorphic design. The mecha armor would turn into different colors according to the wearer's mood. Thus, after Wang Ming tried his best to regain his composure, the mecha armor's color returned to its original silver-gray color. Suddenly, Wang Ming realized that this design seemed a little redundant. He had actually exposed his own mood. That was too stupid. What if other people found out that he was a pervert? He had to change it. At that moment, Wang Ming made up his mind. Everyone looked around at their surroundings. In front of them was a cliff about 10 meters away, and at the bottom was a bottomless abyss. This abyss was extremely wide and stretched out on both sides, and there was no end to it at first glance. A great world? Odd Chua squatted down at the mouth of the abyss and looked down. He felt the aura of a large world. This was the ability of a small world. Small worlds could be stored in magic treasures through technical means, but large worlds could not. The space of a great world was equivalent to 1,000 lesser worlds. Because space was too vast, unless it was a top-grade space-type magic treasure, ordinary magic treasures would not be able to contain a large world. Oh, this is indeed a large world. Even with my abilities, I can only swallow 2 at most. Wuji said. As the king of the sacred beasts, it was not strange for Devil King to be able to set up a great world, but for Wuji to be able to swallow 2 great worlds, this was still very shocking. It could only be said that this was indeed a top-notch spatial magic treasure made from 49 pieces of holy beast skin. Can you analyze this great world? Odd Chua asked. Of course you can. This was only a large world, and it was still within the range of Wuji's insight. Wuji closed her eyes and meditated for a while. A moment later, a black light surged out of her palm like an ink lotus and surged into the air in front of them. In the end, the ink in the air converged to form the image of this great world. Following Wuji's analysis of this tomb map, a shocking scene unfolded. The transparent part of this map is the abyss of this great world. Wuji's words were astonishing. Everyone's mouths dropped open. It turned out that the abyss in front of them was actually an array. Devil King had set up a great world, split open the earth, and used the abyss to construct an array. It might look ordinary up close, but after Wuji's analysis, a shocking plan of the array constructed from the abyss appeared before everyone's eyes. This was a very ingenious array, so ingenious that everyone here, including Little Silver, was deceived. If it wasn't for Wuji's analysis, they might not have been able to see through it at all. What is Devil King's intention in using the abyss to construct an array? Odd Chua lowered his eyes slightly as he stared at the abyss in front of him and said thoughtfully. His realm was low, and he couldn't sense the marvelous fluctuations of the abyss array. On the other hand, Fatty Luo, Little Silver and Wuji on the side all had shocked expressions on their faces, as if they had seen some strange phenomenon. I see. Wang Ming suddenly shuddered and his eyes widened. Don't tell me this is the legendary Nation Refinement Array. Little Silver, Odd Chua, Fatty Luo, Wuji, Wang Ming, think about it. As the king of beasts, Devil King naturally wasn't willing to accept the sudden destruction of the holy beast race. Hence, Devil King deliberately faked his death and set up this kind of array in the tomb, waiting for the day when he could resurrect all the holy beasts at the cost of refining an entire nation. Is that really the case? Little Silver was stupefied by Wang Ming's words. Maybe, but we don't have any evidence. At the moment, we still can't confirm whether or not Devil King is still alive. But I don't think it's that easy for this Beast King to die. Wang Ming sighed regretfully. At that moment, an old voice suddenly rang out from behind them. You lot, trespassing on the tomb is a dead end. This was the old man who had appeared outside the entrance to the Imperial Tree tomb after everyone had entered the space tunnel. The old man wasn't tall, less than 1.5 meters tall. He wore a thick golden-brown robe that was covered in all kinds of strange mushrooms. His head was covered in golden-red diamond-shaped leaves, which were unique to the Imperial Tree. He was a short old man, but he gave off a very frightening aura. When he spoke indifferently, there was a great majesty about him. A tree goblin of the Imperial Tree. Little Silver could already tell who the old man was. This was a tree goblin of the Imperial Tree, but it didn't belong to the demon race. The demon race used demon chi, but the tree goblin in front of them used genuine spirit energy, so it should be a special kind of spirit beast. You are? Wang Ming asked as he stared at the old man. I am the tomb guardian, the old man replied. You have already trespassed into a restricted area. Unless it's a holy beast, no one can leave this place alive. Is there no room for discussion? Jua asked. We didn't mean to offend you, the old man narrowed his eyes, his gaze resolute. No. Fine, then we can only fight. Saying that, Jua flashed his ring, and a white flame appeared at the top of the ring. Fire. Fire of purification. How could a golden core cultivator mobilize this kind of godly object? The old man instantly broke out in a cold sweat as the pressure returned to him. Chua raised the fire of purification high. Come on. Let's fight. I don't know anything else but the fireball spell. Wang Ming, Fatty Luo, Little Silver, and Wuji. Chapter 764. It had to be said that Chua felt that the old man's desire to survive was very strong. Compared to Limitless Sword God, he was far superior. After all, it was just a wood gremlin, so of course it was afraid of fire attacks. Although Chua didn't know the specific origin of this flame of purification, he knew that since Shifu had given it to him, it definitely wasn't ordinary. At this moment, the old man's eyes were still fixed on the little white flame of the purification fire, and he felt extremely nervous. The old man couldn't understand how such a divine object fell into the hands of a mere gold core stage cultivator. This was the flame of purification. The legendary Yin fire would only linger around the edge of the moon during a lunar eclipse, when the sun and moon overlapped. This was a divine fire born from heaven and earth. The conditions to collect it were extremely harsh, and because it was extremely difficult to collect, the only person who had a large reserve of the fire of purification was an itinerant cultivator who first discovered it. Dao name, Emperor Yen Yu. This was a true immortal level great figure, but he didn't have a fixed residence, and he traveled everywhere. However, according to what the old man knew, there was another rumor that the fiery moon emperor had taken in a secular disciple and passed on the flame of purification that he had collected many years ago to his disciple. If this matter is true, then everything would make sense. At this thought, the old man suddenly looked up at Jua. Could it be that this person was the disciple of the flame moon emperor? My name is Qin Lang. I apologize for my rudeness just now. The old man cupped his fists towards them. Although Qin Lang had been hiding in this forest all these years guarding the Beast King's tomb, he had always been paying attention to the outside world. The monarch tree's roots were extremely long and could pierce through the void to the outside world. Qin Lang's method of obtaining information was to connect with the small tree fairies in the outside world and have them report the information they obtained to him. Thus, Qin Lang had long known that Huaxiu Alliance was organizing an exploration of Beast King's remains this time. Moreover, they had taken special precautions to cover up the Emperor Tree Forest in the west. However, they had still been discovered. It was at this moment that Qin Lang was astonished to discover Little Silver's existence. Qin Lang was stunned. He had never imagined that there would be surviving holy beasts after the calamity of the holy beasts back then. Although Huaxiao Alliance hadn't given up on searching for Wang Ming's whereabouts, the summer camp still had to go on as usual. Since Wang Ming wasn't around, Old Antique would be the lead teacher for Wang Ling's team. And because Xia Yin was still unable to extricate herself from the grief of Wang Ming's disappearance, Xia Yin's team was handed over to Old Antique. Coupled with Old Antique's original team, he was now in charge of 3 teams on his own. It had been 12 hours since Wang Ming had disappeared, and it was now past 7 in the morning. There was a classroom inside the rainbow glass box, which was specially reserved for the lead teachers of each team. Old Antique was sorting out today's itinerary. The official event would begin at 8:30 in the morning. First, there would be a 1.5-hour observation and cultivation of spirit plants. The specific content would be different from the tour of the base station yesterday. It was an advanced course. The main reason was that more and more students chose to major in combat when they advanced to university every year. Hence, Huaxiao Alliance had specially arranged for spirit plants interest courses this time. They hoped to arouse some students' interest in studying spirit plants and medicinal herbs, and when they entered the pharmacology department in university, they would learn alchemy and medicine. Someone in the rainbow glass box asked Old Antique, Teacher, what are we going to do in the advanced course? Back then, there was the story of Shenong tasting 100 herbs, so in this advanced course, we want everyone to be able to accurately grasp the drug mutation of spirit plants on the basis of yesterday's lesson, Old Antique said. Drug mutation was a technical term. In general, it was about the mutation of some spirit plants under certain conditions. For example, some spirit plants were non-toxic when dry, but once they came into contact with rain or dew, they would become highly toxic. This situation also applied to some poisonous spirit plants. For example, under certain conditions, they could be transformed into non-toxic varieties. It was just that these drug mutations needed to be tested manually. Every year, Huaxiao Nation's Cultivation Academy of Science would specially recruit a group of cultivators who had undergone antitoxin cultivation all year round to be tested manually. This was a restricted, high-paying job, and was called Shenong. They only worked 24 hours a year, but they could use these 24 hours to earn enough money for a down payment on a house in Jinghua City's inner ring. Not many people were qualified for this job and had to go through strict screening by the government. It was just that it was still a little early for senior grade 1 freshmen at this stage to learn about drug mutations. This was knowledge for senior grade 3 students. But it was a rare summer camp this time, and the school definitely wouldn't let go of this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. In Wang Ling's view, this was a little like an advanced training. Everyone needs to understand the drug mutations of spirit plants through the 1.5-hour observation and cultivation class in the morning. Then at noon, we'll provide you with some raw materials for spirit plants that have undergone drug mutations, including neutral, non-toxic, and poisonous materials. Everyone needs to cook the spirit plants DIY according to the knowledge they have at hand, Old Antique said. Then do we have to eat it ourselves? Someone asked weakly. Of course we have to eat it. Old Antique nodded. But in order to promote friendship between schools and promote friendly exchanges between students, Disabled Elderly Senior High School will be responsible for tasting the food we make. And we'll be the ones to eat Disabled Elderly Senior High School's food. It turned out to be an exchange of food tastings. A lot of people were suddenly enlightened. By the way, everyone, please take this cooking seriously. It counts as a team score. The specific rules are as follows. After the cooking, students from both schools will exchange food tastings. There will be hidden points and basic points. Based on the situation, everyone needs to analyze whether the food is edible or not. If you're right, you'll get 5 points, and if you're wrong, you'll get 5 points deducted. The above are hidden points, which will be appraised by specialized teachers. As for the basic points, for every student on the other side poisoned, our team will get 5 points. The lowest score for the team is 0, and the highest is 200. As soon as Old Antique finished speaking, everyone instantly fell silent. Then, someone asked, "Teacher, won't it poison people to death?" Old Antique, all the spirit plants in this cooking have been carefully selected. The poison won't be strong, and will at most cause people to faint. The poison will then be excreted in sweat. Depending on your physique, some students may only be unconscious for 3 days at most. If you're unlucky enough to be poisoned, remember to fill in your summer camp diary after you wake up, and also collect a poison report. After all, the teachers aren't devils. Old Antique, oh, by the way, during the cooking stage, you also have a chance to ask for outside help. You can call a teacher or parent for help. Chapter 765. In Devil King's tomb, Little Silver and Qin Lang looked at each other. When their gazes met, both of them had their own thoughts, and their hearts were in turmoil. Rumor has it that His Majesty Beast King was eaten in his sleep. Is this true? Little Silver suddenly fixed his eyes on Qin Lang and asked. Given His Majesty Beast King's status, how could he have drowned in such a clumsy way? Qin Lang shook his head and denied this extremely fierce history. But, I know what you want to say, Qin Lang said. Isn't there a rumor in the outside world that His Majesty Beast King's meat is very unpalatable? It's salty to the point of numbness. Little Silver and the others were stunned when they heard this. When it came to the question of what on earth Beast King's meat tasted like, the outside world was extremely unanimous. They all said that it was 1,000-year-old cured meat that had been soaked in salt water for a long time, and was hard and salty. Furthermore, the Cultivation Forum unanimously agreed with this answer. It was said that back then, someone had brought back a piece of Beast King meat and processed it into jerky for many cultivators to taste. In the end, those cultivators all vomited after eating it. Some people even felt that the taste of Beast King meat was thousands of times stronger than canned herring. This kind of meat craving couldn't make the kid next door cry, but it could definitely drive him crazy. Qin Lang smiled slightly. Of course, he had looked up the rumors in the outside world, so he thought they were especially ridiculous. His Majesty Beast King's meat is a wholly nourishing object. Even if you cut off a piece of skin from his foot and stick it on a human cultivator's wound, it has the miraculous effect of disinfecting and promoting healing without leaving any scars at all. If you can eat a piece of real Beast King meat, even if it's only the size of a piece of braised pork, you can save at least 10 years of bitter cultivation. Hearing this, Wang Ming's eyes lit up. So you're saying that the rumors in the outside world about eating Beast King meat are fake? Beast King didn't die. Of course they're fake. Qin Lang sighed. Those stupid people thought they ate Beast King meat, but in fact, it was just His Majesty Beast King's clone technique. Clone technique, people should be able to see through it, right? Little Silver was blank. There are 2 types of clone techniques. One is a virtual clone, and the other is a physical clone. The doppelganger was constructed from spiritual power and one's own qi, so it was naturally easy to see through. However, a physical clone is different. As long as you can find a physical clone with a similar density to your physical body and use a spell, it will be very difficult to see through it. Qin Lang said, therefore, the Lord Beast King who was eaten back then was only Lord Beast King's avatar. What did His Majesty Beast King use to replace his body? Little Silver asked curiously. Qin Lang, what you're stepping on is, everyone. Wang Ming stamped the ground. That's not right, this ground is very solid. It is indeed sturdy. Qin Lang nodded. But you must know that the land you're standing on, as well as the mountains and abyss you see, are all made of Lord Beast King's feces. Little Silver was stupefied. Everyone, at that moment, Little Silver only felt extremely remorseful. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's house was too clean, and Little Silver usually liked the cold, so he was always barefoot. In order to not step on the dirt in the forest, he had to fly in the air in the past. Now that he was inside the tomb, he could finally relax. Who would have thought that in the end, his fair feet would still step on Devil King's feces? Sure enough, wearing shoes was a good habit. He had to change. He had to change. Qin Lang, is there anything else you want to ask? Little Silver, is there a place where I can wash my feet? Then please follow me to the Great Hall of the Tomb. Once you're inside, you'll naturally have an answer to your other questions, said Qin Lang. His words had a profound meaning. Qin Lang didn't directly answer whether or not Devil King was still alive, but the truth was right in front of them. Everything would naturally be revealed once they entered the Great Hall of the Tomb. Then, everyone saw Qin Lang take out a jade scroll from his chest pocket. It was engraved with an array diagram, which was the same one that Wuji had seen after examining the entire abyss. What's the origin of this array diagram? He asked. This was set up by His Majesty Beast King, and is specially used to open the door to the Great Hall. His Majesty Beast King went to great lengths to set up this abyss array in the hope that one day a holy beast would find this place and discover the truth that he was still alive. But 1,000 years have passed, and His Majesty Beast King has long since given up hope. At this point, Qin Lang's words came to an abrupt halt. It seemed that he still had something to say, but he couldn't go on. Then, he tossed the jade scroll into the air. Instantly, the array diagram in the jade scroll turned into a stream of light that shot into the sky and toward the dome. It was only then that everyone realized that the bright thing in the dome of this great world wasn't the moon. Let's go in. Qin Lang looked up at the glowing object in the sky. Little Silver paused and looked at Qin Lang. I have one last question. What on earth is this glowing thing? Why does it look a little familiar? But it doesn't seem to be the moon. This is the Great Hall of the Tomb. You can also think of it as His Majesty Beast King's coffin. I see. A few seconds later, the coffin that Qin Lang was talking about in the sky glowed, and a beam of light directly fell on the edge of the abyss like a spotlight. Then, everyone felt their bodies lighten. This beam of light naturally gave birth to a gravitational force that slowly led them over. Fatty Luo was filled with emotion as they rose into the sky. This was a spell that could change gravity. It was at least level 7, and was a fairly high-level spell. An ordinary person would find it difficult to cast. A holy beast's battle strength couldn't be measured by a cultivator's realm to begin with. Fatty Luo remembered that when Little Silver had been rescued from Immortal Mansion, he had been a 6th-class holy beast, and his battle strength had been on par with an itinerant immortal's. But now, he was already a 5th-class holy beast. On the way here, Fatty Luo had specially asked about Little Silver's situation, and all this was thanks to Ling Jinren and Senior Ling. A 5th-class holy beast's battle strength was already on par with a true immortal's. As for the king of holy beasts, Fatty Luo reckoned that it was at least 1st class, or even 2nd class. That was to say, if one analyzed its strength on paper, the king of holy beasts' overall battle strength was a lot stronger than that of an ordinary 9th-class true immortal. While Fatty Luo was thinking this, everyone was already getting closer and closer to the glowing object in the sky. Little Silver finally saw what on earth it was. It was a huge LCD TV that was glowing, when you were staring into the abyss. Chapter 766. Little Silver rubbed his eyes to confirm that he wasn't seeing things. This was indeed a giant LCD TV. Little Silver was stupefied. He never expected the legendary coffin of His Majesty Beast King to look like this. Why does this coffin look so much like an LCD TV? Little Silver was puzzled. Qin Lang smiled at him. Let me correct you, it doesn't look like an LCD TV, it's an LCD TV. Everyone, the group of people was guided to the front of the screen by the light. Qin Lang pressed his palm on a huge disc, and the disc quickly emitted light. Your identities have been verified. Please come with me, Qin Lang said. That disc just now, that's a set-top box. A path leading to the inside of the LCD TV was opened. In the huge inner hall of the Beast King Hall, there was a giant beast with a green horn on its head, a purple beard, and silver teeth lying motionlessly on the ground. This giant beast was more than 300 feet tall, like a huge mountain. Several data cables as thick as water pipes were connected to the Beast King's head. These cables were connected to the black box on the Beast King's back. Sure enough, His Majesty Beast King isn't dead. Little Silver was very excited at this scene. Because he wasn't the only living holy beast. His Majesty Beast King was still alive. After the Holy Beast Apocalypse, Little Silver had thought that he could no longer see any hope for the resurrection of holy beasts. But if His Majesty Beast King was still alive, then everything was possible. Devil King's blood was the holy blood of 100 beasts. As long as the genes were extracted and cultivated, it was entirely possible for the extinct holy beasts to come back to life. Furthermore, the holy beast with the highest chance of resurrection should be Dog Saint, because Loopy Toad had picked up Dog Saint's broken bones. If it could be used together, poor Dog Saint might be able to take advantage of this opportunity to be reborn. For a moment, Little Silver's mind was filled with all sorts of emotions. The fire of hope that had been extinguished for many years was now suddenly reignited. But very quickly, Qin Lang sighed on the side. To be honest, even I never thought that there would actually still be living holy beasts in this world. You've probably suffered a lot to survive on your own since the extinction of the holy beasts. It's all right, Little Silver pursed his lips. He had indeed suffered a lot, but now he had grenade throwing and master. His Majesty Beast King has always blamed himself for the extinction of the holy beasts back then, Qin Lang said. Qin Lang said, he originally thought that there were still living holy beasts in this world, but he didn't expect that the holy beasts would be completely devoured by those brutal human cultivators. He was also a little shocked as he stared at the giant beast in front of him. The legendary king of sacred beasts, the Rakshasa King's true appearance, and in its original form, could be counted on one's fingers. How long has Devil King been in this state? Wang Ming suddenly turned to ask. Ever since Lord Beast King confirmed that none of the holy beasts had survived, he has fallen into this state, Qin Lang frowned. Lord Beast King holds a high position and has always resided in the depths of the palace, never coming into contact with others, Lang's king's only friend. However, at the time of the incident, I was in the midst of my 1,000-year tribulation. It was only after the tribulation ended that I found out about the extinction of the holy beasts. Wang, King, Silvered, King. More or less. Qin Lang nodded. Since he had already brought them in, he naturally had nothing to hide. Of course, the most important reason was that he was afraid of the flame of purification. Lord Beast King has been living in the depths of the palace for a long time. He doesn't have any special hobbies other than playing games, said Qin Lang. Play. The few water pipes that you're looking at right now are, for example. They can be pierced directly into the cranial nerves, allowing a person to create a game world in their brain. This is a special game console that Lord Beast King spent a large sum of money to get custom-made. At the time of the incident, Lord Beast King happened to be at a checkpoint and was studying the checkpoint strategy. But after several days, Lord Beast King still couldn't clear the game perfectly, so he quit the game. At that time, the sacred beasts were already on the verge of extinction. As a result, the Beast King began to blame himself. After finding out that there were no more holy beasts left, the Beast King went into seclusion. For the past 1,000 years, Lord Beast King has refused to look at strategy guides and has remained in the game world, refusing to face reality. The corners of Little Silver's eyes twitched when he heard this ending. He felt that this was a little too much information. The only thing he could extract from the words of this Mr. Imperial Tree Goblin just now was, the legendary Lord Beast King was a damn fat otaku. Speaking up to this point, Qin Lang heaved a deep sigh. It's just a pity that you all appeared too late. Otherwise, even if Lord Beast King knew that there was still one more holy beast, he might have been able to emerge from his gloom. Is there a way to wake Beast King up? Wang Ming asked again. Yes, there is, and there are two ways. Qin Lang nodded. The first way is to help Lord Beast King clear the game. Lord Beast King hasn't switched to another game for the past 1,000 years, because so far, he hasn't been able to achieve a perfect ending. As long as he can clear the game perfectly, at the very least, Lord Beast King will choose to quit the game and switch. That's an opportunity. Everyone was silent. Wang Ming, what about the second way? The second way is to wait, Qin Lang said. Lord Beast King wakes up once every 500 years to clean up his body and eat. He eats 500 years worth of food in one go and slowly digests it in his body. When that time comes, it will naturally be an opportunity. If you can wait, I'll let you know before I order takeout next time. Order takeout. That's right. Qin Lang nodded. You should already be able to tell that there's more than one entrance to the tomb. The entrance inside Beast King's remains is just the main entrance, but in order to make it easier to communicate with the outside world, I use my tree roots to open up the void and connect it to the outside world. I then contact a delivery person to bring it in through the outside entrance. But because the order is huge and the connection to the tomb is full of danger, every year, many delivery people die in order to deliver this order. Everyone, sure enough, you couldn't even be a delivery person these days if you didn't have any skills. Little Silver remembered that he had heard news about all kinds of mysterious delivery people before. These delivery people had saved programmers who had almost died when delivering takeout, or jumped onto roofs and vaulted over walls to save children who had accidentally climbed out of windows. It seemed that there was no place in the world that delivery people couldn't go. Chapter 767. After learning the truth, Little Silver was stupefied for a long time, as if his acupuncture points had been hit, and he was trying his best to digest it. The good news was that Beast King wasn't dead. As long as Beast King was around, it was still possible for holy beasts to rise again. The bad news was that Beast King was now in an autistic state, addicted to the virtual world and unable to extricate himself. In order to study how to write novels like Father Wang, Little Silver had especially studied human psychology before. He wanted to analyze what kind of novels readers would like more. According to Little Silver's analysis, His Majesty Beast King was currently in a state of avoidance. Perhaps it wasn't that His Majesty Beast King couldn't clear the game perfectly, but that he didn't want to, which was why he had been stuck in the game's plot. There's no other way. We can only think of a way to help His Majesty Beast King clear the game perfectly. Little Silver frowned as he looked at the sleeping behemoth in front of him. That's the only way. Chua nodded, then looked at Qin Lang on the side. Do you know what game Beast King plays? It's called Detroit. Cultivation. Qin Lang nodded. Everyone suddenly understood. This was a game that wasn't new, but wasn't old either. That was because not long ago, the game had received a brand new update which expanded the plot and made it seem even larger. Little Silver had wanted to play it before the operation, but he didn't have time to learn it. This was a story about a human cultivator and a robot. In the fictional world, an organization called Membrane Control Life had invented a fully intelligent robot to serve humans. There were many functions for robots, including those for home use, for teaching, for children, and even for sex. They would work according to a program set by humans and could think for themselves. Just as everyone was rejoicing over the convenience provided by robots, the world's first case of a bionic robot injuring a human occurred. The cause of the case was the owner who had been repeatedly beating and abusing the bionic robot after getting drunk. The bionic robot, which had originally been set up to never attack humans, unexpectedly gained self-awareness under its owner's tyranny. It even started to rebel against its owner. In the end, the bionic robot was recalled by Membrane Control Life on the grounds that it had malfunctioned, and the injured customer received 30 times the original price as compensation. And then, Chua had never played this game before. But when he heard Little Silver's introduction, he was suddenly very interested in the story of this game. Little Silver nodded and continued telling the story. At that time, the bionic robot was successfully subdued by its owner, and its owner thought that it was just a case of bad luck. Therefore, the media did not pay attention to this matter at that time. In the end, Membrane Control Life chose to pay a huge compensation of 30 times the original amount to minimize the consequences of this incident. But what they didn't expect was that similar incidents started to happen again and again. 2 months after the first incident, someone discovered that the android at home had learned to regulate its breath and cultivate on its own. It could also learn the Heart Sutra by secretly observing its master's cultivation pattern, robots learning to cultivate on their own. Is that even possible? Fatty Luo questioned. Although this was only a virtual game, it was a little too much to ask such a question. Of course not with ordinary machines, but it might be possible with a humanoid bionic magic treasure. Wang Ming raised his head and answered. He had the right to speak on this point. That was because Wang Ling was the one who had designed Head of State 001, and it had the ability to learn on its own to begin with. Its core energy was the same as Wang Ling 1's current, Wang Ling 1, which was powered by a core hub that could store spirit energy. However, Head of State 001's design was more elaborate. Through its bionic meridians, it could imitate a normal cultivator's breath regulation, and draw spirit energy from the spirit chi of heaven and earth back into the core hub. This was the difference between ordinary androids and humanoid bionic magic treasures. The bionic robots in the game didn't clearly state whether they were magic treasures or not, so there was no need to take them seriously. However, this type of robot that could cultivate on its own could indeed be achieved with current technology. However, each one would cost a huge amount of money. Currently, no country in the world had the ability to mass-produce them, and this type of robot was still in the experimental stage. It was just like the magic crystal technology that Night Chief had revealed in advance. If this kind of bionic robot is really produced, it will definitely be on guard, right? Fatty Luo was suddenly a little worried when he heard Wang Ming's words. Humans had created this kind of machine, which was a condensation of the most cutting-edge technology currently available, and which had the ability to learn on its own. If such a robot really existed, once it developed the ability to think, would it really become a new intelligent life form? Would it replace humans? All of this sounded a little unimaginable, but it was indeed a question worth thinking about. When humans invented a machine that had the ability to think on its own and learn to cultivate. And when it tried to share the freedom of this world with humans, what kind of attitude would you adopt? Would you accept a new type of intelligent life form and share the beauty of a prosperous world? Or would you stand on the opposite side and do your best to stop the revolution instigated by this new type of intelligent life form? No matter what, let's go in and take a look first, said Audiobook. Little Silver, but how are we going to get in? Wang Ming smiled. I'm here, what's there to be afraid of? On this side, the summer camp was going on as usual, and the plan to infiltrate the game in Beast King's tomb was already in place. On the other side, President Bai, who had successfully regained his composure and returned from the dead, was slowly adapting to his new body. Night Ghost Spirit Emperor hadn't truly died, but had exchanged identities with President Bai. President Bai now truly understood what it was like for a farmer to become a landlord. After returning to Night Chief's headquarters, President Bai imitated Night Ghost Spirit Emperor's tone of voice to calm the troops, and then began to repair the base headquarters as well as plan to replace it. Sitting on the throne, he looked at the empire that Night Ghost Spirit Emperor had conquered. Now that he was enjoying the fruits of Night Ghost Spirit Emperor's labor, everything was his. Night Ghost Spirit Emperor was imprisoned somewhere in the Soul Repository. Bai Zhe, how dare you plot against me? President Bai could hear him directly. Instead of directly killing Night Ghost Spirit Emperor, he chose to imprison him. He had to admit that he was a vindictive person. He wanted this Lord Spirit Emperor to also experience the pain of being tortured in the Soul Repository. Chapter 768. Night Ghost Spirit Emperor's heart was as clear as a mirror. He was well aware that this wasn't some creation art, but some other technique similar to the creation art. But when Night Ghost Spirit Emperor learned from President Bai that this technique was the reverse polarity spell, a storm instantly surged in his heart. This was because the reverse polarity spell wasn't part of Dao. This was an extremely rare outer Dao technique that had the power to reverse a dangerous situation and change fate. President Bai sneered. Lord Spirit Emperor, you're really naive. Why don't you think about it? How can there be a technique in this world that can quickly heal a wounded body without paying any price? The so-called creation art is just a cover. In order to deceive people, the ancestors of the Bai clan changed the name of the creation art when they obtained the reversal of polarity, making it look like a high-level medical spell. You've already set this up from the beginning. Night Ghost Spirit Emperor never expected Bai's ambition to be so great. Endure and hide. President Bai snapped his fingers. These are the last words my father said to me when my Bai clan was exterminated back then. Although he never thought much of me, a concubine, in the end, blood is thicker than water. With your help, I did indeed ascend to the throne of the Bai clan. But in order to prevent the creation art from leaking out, you killed everyone in my clan. You personally acquiesced to this back then. Night Ghost Spirit Emperor grit his teeth. I only acquiesced. When did I ever express any opinion? President Bai said. Night Ghost Spirit Emperor was silent for a very long time. Young man, it's not good to hold a grudge. Night Ghost Spirit Emperor could already guess what President Bai's next plan was. President Bai's eyes were already blinded by hatred. Now that he had obtained a new body with the power of outer Dao and had returned from the dead, there was no way he would let go of his revenge. Night Ghost Spirit Emperor speculated that it was very likely that President Bai would retaliate against that mysterious expert who looked like a teenager again. Even if you have my body, you're no match for him. Night Ghost Spirit Emperor sighed as he tried to persuade President Bai. He has over 1,000 heavenly Dao, I'm naturally not his match now. President Bai smiled. But the power of outer Dao isn't limited to just reverse polarity. President Bai had already formulated his next revenge plan. He was going to collect more of the power of outer Dao and use it to fight the heavenly Dao. But President Bai had no idea what kind of player he was dealing with. It was true that the power Wang Ling had revealed from beginning to end was the power of heavenly Dao. But that didn't mean he didn't understand outer Dao. In Beast King's tomb, Wang Ming and the others were carrying out the watch and rescue plan in an orderly manner. Connect the data cable. Wang Ming gave a very simple command, and a very long tube instantly extended from Wang Lingwan's back to connect to Beast King's body. This catheter was a kind of neural interface device, originally used to extract memories. Of course, it also had the special effect of peering into dreams. Wang Ming was now using it as a spirit connection device. Finally, Qin Lang would step in and use magic to link everyone's spirits together. Little Silver didn't understand what on earth was going on, but somehow he felt that it was very awesome. The connection is about to start. Everyone, relax. Qin Lang's tree roots had already wrapped around everyone's ankles. Almost instantly, the scene in front of everyone's eyes started to change. In the blink of an eye, the scene in front of them switched to the interior of an apartment. This was a story revolving around 3 bionic robots and a bionic man named Connor. The entire game was a mixture of 3 main storylines. Only when all 3 protagonists of the 3 storylines survived in the end could it be considered a relatively happy ending. The perfect ending that Beast King wanted was not only for all 3 of them to survive, but also for the humans in this game world to acknowledge the existence of bionic robots and acknowledge them as new intelligent life forms. I looked it up before, and the probability of a perfect ending in this game is 2%, Little Silver said, pursing his lips. This was an extremely low probability. Although Little Silver knew the situation in the game, he had never played it himself, and had only skimmed through the general plot of the game. Now, they had to play it from the beginning. Whether or not they could achieve a 2% chance of a perfect ending was a mystery to everyone, but the strange thing was that they didn't receive any system prompts after entering the game. Instead, they followed Wang Ming's footsteps to the rooftop. In this plot, a family bionic robot called Daniel kidnapped a little girl. The little girl was called Medusa, but she met a little brother called Brother Yen through an online relationship, and as a result, Daniel's mentality changed. Thus, on this day, when Daniel saw Medusa happily chatting with Brother Yen and ignoring him, he actually straightaway flew into a rage, picked up his spirit sword, and took the girl Medusa hostage to the rooftop. The company that created the robots, Membrane Control Life, had sent Connor, a police robot, to negotiate, and they had to rescue the little girl hostage from the abnormal bionic hands. Let me explain the situation. Wang Ming said, "We're currently not the protagonists, who are still being manipulated by Beast King. But because we don't know what choice Beast King will make, we have to be fully prepared to help Beast King clear the game. I can replace everyone here with any NPC in the game." So that's how it works. Everyone nodded. At that moment, the plot had developed to the point where Beast King had to make a choice. The abnormal bionic, Daniel, roared at Beast King's character, Connor. "Back off. You back off. Otherwise, I'll cut this girl down." At that moment, Beast King's choice for facing Daniel popped up on his interface. Let Daniel calm down, insult Daniel, appease Daniel, sympathize with Daniel times. To everyone's surprise, Beast King directly chose. Thus, Beast King's character Connor started to comply with the choice as he yelled at Daniel, "What are you looking at? If you look again, believe it or not, I'll kill you." Daniel instantly became agitated and was on the verge of breaking down. "I thought Medusa and I could find happiness. But she only has Emperor Yen in her heart." The choice appeared again. Let Daniel calm down, tell Daniel the truth, caress Daniel, spit at Daniel times. Sure enough, Beast King unsurprisingly chose the most unreliable times. "Connor, bah. You're just a household bionic, and you still want to find happiness with a girl. Don't you know that thing down there was already turned off when it left the factory?" Everything was as Little Silver had predicted at the beginning. From the very beginning, Beast King had no intention of winning this game at all. He just chose a choice that completely defied common sense and deliberately made it impossible for him to clear the game in order to escape reality. Wang Ming sighed. "Does anyone have any good suggestions?" Fatty Luo volunteered. "Replace me with a girl. I haven't dressed in women's clothes in a long time." Everyone, both Odd Zhua and Little Silver, remembered that Fatty Luo and Dharmaraja had worn women's clothes together the last time they had tried Immortal Mansion. Sure enough, they could only dress in women's clothes once. Chapter 769. Because everyone was mentally connected, in this situation, Wang Ming and the others were like dream stealers helping Dream Master Beast King clear the game. But because Wang Ming had relied on hacking to hack his way into the game world, he could also be considered a fake dream owner. "Wait here, I'll make you a set of clothes." Wang Ming had never seen Fatty Luo in women's clothes before, and was actually very curious. A few seconds later, Wang Ming relied on his skills to directly change Fatty Luo's clothes in front of everyone into a very Lolita-style black and red maid outfit. "How is it? Does it look good?" Fatty Luo spun around in a circle, very happy, the expression on his face like a splendid chrysanthemum. F***K. Little Silver covered his eyes. He had really been provoked. For some reason, it felt like his eyes weren't his anymore. Somehow, they felt so hot. It was like they had been dripped with the godly balm used by female live streamers. They felt like they were on fire. As expected, cross-dressing can only be done once or countless times. Odd Zhua also sighed with emotion. "Look. Fatty Luo is smiling so happily. It seemed that he had developed some strange attribute, just like a certain author who did not do his job properly." "Right. 3 days and 2 sleeps. I'm talking about you. According to the normal development of the game plot, the character, Connor, controlled by Beast King had to save the little girl for the mission to be considered complete. Now that the Beast King had officially infuriated the android Daniel, Daniel would definitely kill the little girl and then commit suicide, perishing together with her. Because Beast King didn't want to win at all, he would definitely continue to choose some weird options to provoke Daniel's emotions. Hence, at that moment, there was already no other choice. I'll help you change. Wang Ming used his skills to directly swap Fatty Luo and the little girl hostage. What everyone didn't expect was that this change actually changed the entire plot of the game. When Daniel, who had been standing on the edge of the rooftop with the little girl in his hand, saw that the little girl in his hand had turned into Dharmaraja in maid outfit, his entire body actually revealed an indescribably terrified expression. F***K. Who the hell was this? Where was his Medusa? Where on earth had Medusa gone? Who are you? Daniel was extremely shocked. How should I put it? Fatty Luo tugged at the hem of his maid uniform and said a little embarrassedly, I don't want to admit it, but I'm your Medusa. Daniel hugged his head and was on the verge of collapse. No. My Medusa can't look like this. At this moment, the option appeared again. Recite a poem to Daniel, gain Daniel's trust. Provoke Daniel with a questioning attitude. Cross-dressing with a hostage asterisk, the instant Beast King chose, the character he controlled, Connor, continued to talk to Daniel. Daniel. Wake up. You must admit that it is not Medusa that you love. You only love Medusa's appearance. Daniel went crazy. No. I really do love her. I love her more than anything. But Medusa only loved her younger brother and younger brother. If you want me to let Medusa go, then I request to restore the factory settings. I don't want to turn off the chicken. As long as I don't turn off the chicken. My chicken neck is as long as I want it to be. Compromise with Daniel, provoke Daniel. Directly reject, encourage Daniel to kiss the hostage asterisk, Beast King chose, times everyone, Connor, I can make a request to Membrane Control Life to restore you to your factory settings. But you must put down your weapons and prove to me with your actions that you love Medusa, not her appearance. You must kiss Medusa. Daniel looked at the gorgeously dressed Fatty Luo, and his throat rolled a little in fear. Then he looked at Connor. I can kiss Medusa, but this isn't Medusa. There's no way Medusa would have a fire stick under her. Medusa has always been in your hands. From the moment you kidnapped her, she has always been in your hands. So what you're seeing now is just an illusion. Medusa is still the same as before. If you refuse to kiss her, it only proves that you don't love her at all. As long as you kiss the hostage, I promise. I'll go online with you and curse humans. Connor roared, everyone says that the keyboard is good. Behind the screen is a bag of grass. Hold the keyboard high in the air. You can scold people until you're full. Everyone, Daniel, but, Connor, Daniel, no buts. If you really are a robot with true feelings, I don't think kissing will be a problem for you. If you can't kiss her, it only proves that you don't have feelings for Medusa. Let me ask you, who are you? Daniel was about to go crazy. I'm Daniel. This time, only two options appeared in the system. You're not Daniel, start from the end of the universe, Beast King chose, Connor, then let's start from the end of the universe. You can be called Daniel, I can be called Daniel, we can all be called Daniel. Daniel, this is just a Daniel, a codename, a name. But after we remove this codename, who are you? Are you a robot? Or a human? Daniel, your question is meaningless. Then let's talk about something meaningful. Connor quickly continued, where do we come from, and where do we die? Why do I have to appear on this rooftop to persuade you to kiss the hostage? What do you mean to this world? Is there an inevitable connection between us and the universe? Does the universe have an end? Does a chicken's neck have a length? Can a chicken that is turned off be restarted? Can Medusa's old ticket still board your broken ship? Is the question you're asking now the same question you just heard? Daniel knelt on the ground and Fatty Luo found that Daniel had actually let go of him. Daniel's mental state was extremely unstable. No. I love her. I want to kiss her. Connor shouted, "Who kissed her, and who did you kiss?" Daniel was stunned. He raised his head with a blank face. "It was me, who kissed me." Connor, correct answer, do it. Under everyone's shocked gazes, Daniel let out a painful roar. He used all his strength to pull out his own head, and smashed the mouth on the head against his own body. The huge force caused Daniel to fall backwards, and he fell off the rooftop. At this moment, a prompt came from the system. "Congratulations, your mission has been completed. Completed plot, rescue the hostage girl, Medusa. Completed scenario 2, successfully kill Daniel while the little girl is still alive." Little Silver was startled. This works. Chapter 770. Wang Ling had already received Jue's message. As Wang Ling had expected, Wang Ming's safety hadn't been compromised, and he had successfully escaped the Dead Sea of Space. Not only that, Wang Ming hadn't even used the life talisman that he had set up. In other words, Wang Ming had relied purely on his own abilities to escape this time. In some ways, Wang Ming was indeed an amazing man. It was no wonder that Jia Yin liked him. It was said that Jia Yin had yet to recover from her shock and was filled with grief and self-blame. After this morning's observation and cultivation of spirit plants, Wang Ling happened to pass by Jia Yin's room and saw her reporting to President Qi. There were clear tear stains on her face, and she was a little choked up when she spoke. "Old Qi, if something really has happened to Wang Ming," President Qi was scared out of his wits when he heard this. "Factor, there's still plenty of time. Besides, there's still no direct evidence of Wang Ming's death. Now, the official conclusion is that they have lost contact. Everything has not been determined yet. Don't take things too hard." Old Qi had always known that Jia Yin had special feelings for Wang Ming. Back then, when he had applied for a guard for Wang Ming from Magnificent Immortal, Jia Yin had been the first to raise his hand. Furthermore, at the time, Jia Yin had been the guardian of Magnificent Immortal's depository of Buddhist texts. This was the most well-paid job in Magnificent Immortal, and the place that all the special forces dreamed of going. But at that time, Jia Yin had resolutely given up the opportunity to become Wang Ming's bodyguard. It was only later when Old Qi read Jia Yin's file that he learned that Wang Ming and Jia Yin had met when they were very young. Unfortunately, Wang Ming already didn't recognize Jia Yin. Jia Yin had changed too much in the past few years. Jia Yin sighed. "Old Qi, don't worry. I won't do anything." Hearing this, President Qi heaved a huge sigh of relief. "That's good. I was afraid you'd take things too hard. There were so many good men in the world. Come to think of it. Doesn't Lil Ming have a younger brother? You can attack him." Wang Ling. Jia Yin took a deep breath. "I'm not that kind of person, President Qi, ha ha ha. I know you're not, so I was just joking. In actual fact, Lil Ming is younger than you, so it's fine for you to fall in love with a younger man." Jia Yin knew that President Qi was deliberately changing the subject. "Jia Yin, Old Qi, I've already thought about it. If Wang Ming doesn't come back in the end, I'll resign and go to Nine Dragon Mountain to become Abbess Miju." President Qi coughed. "So that's it, Jia Yin, you sound disappointed." No, I'm just worried that you'll do something stupid." President Qi comforted him. "I heard that you haven't eaten anything all this time, so you should at least go and get some food." "You can't go on like this." Jia Yin nodded. "I understand, Old Qi. I'll take care of myself." I'll cook something for myself later. You burned it for yourself. President Chi was stunned. What was the difference between that and poisoning yourself? Today's lunch was a little special. The cafeteria didn't cook. Instead, all the space was provided to the students of each school. After all the students were divided into different groups according to their schools, they used the knowledge they learned in the morning to cook the spirit herbs in their hands. This not only tested the students' understanding of the new knowledge of drug mutation, but it also trained the students' practical skills. The current era was no longer like the past, when every day was fraught with danger and all kinds of killings. It was relatively more harmonious and stable. Thus, more and more modern cultivators preferred to use food to nourish their bodies rather than refine elixirs to supplement themselves. On one hand, alchemy was a very complicated subject, and not all cultivators could master it. In addition, apart from high school schools that specialized in alchemy, most students would only come into contact with alchemy courses in university. However, the vast majority of children were still cultivating and growing up, and now that their families had the means, they couldn't avoid taking elixirs to supplement themselves. But elixirs were expensive, and no ordinary family could afford them. Even well-off families couldn't afford to take elixirs every day to supplement themselves, unless they were the daughter of a rich family like Lotus Sun, who came from an alchemy corporation. Naturally, this was another matter. And because of the high production cost of medicinal pills and the troublesome refining process, a very strange phenomenon was created. Most people would bring medicinal pills with them when they went to the wilderness for special training, but if they were cultivating in seclusion at home, more than 70% of cultivators would choose to use high-grade spirit plants and food ingredients to cook in order to nourish themselves. Furthermore, the absorption of food supplements was better than that of medicine supplements. A few years ago, there was a popular saying, "Learn how to cook with me." That was when food supplements were the most popular. Wang Ling was still in the same group as Little Peanut and the others, but when it came to cooking, this group was almost all muggles. As they gathered around the cooking table, Super Chin stared at the ingredients in front of him, lost in deep thought. How about it? Does anyone know how to make it? The most delicious dish he had ever made in his life was instant noodles. Furthermore, he could make them in 100 different flavors using braised beef. This was the highest level of instant noodles. But this kind of skill wasn't enough at all here. I've only helped my mom at home. I can make soup, but cooking is a little difficult. Little Peanut also frowned, then looked at Hero Guo next to him. You should know how to do it, right? Dopey Guo was also very helpless. I only cook for spirit beasts. Humans probably won't be able to eat it. Then what about Wang Ling? Forget about Wang Ling, he doesn't look like he knows how to cook. Look at his hands, his skin is as smooth and tender as a girl's. Wang Ling, alright, then we don't need to worry about Wang Ling, question mark. Then let's analyze the ingredients first. Little Peanut, the spirit plant we're going to process now is called wind battle grass. Teacher said before that this kind of grass can grow 300 times faster in a storm. It's poisonous at room temperature, so it has to be cooked at a high temperature. They nodded. After the end of the Great Battle Chi era, this wind battle grass was the only spirit plant that could capture a trace of battle chi, and it had to be boiled at a high temperature. Back then, wind battle grass was an important tool for making the battle strength pill, which was specially used to restore battle chi. Back then, if you had enough battle chi, I heard that once you reached a certain realm, you could turn it into wings. Dopey Guo nodded. Not only could you turn it into wings, you could also turn it into a horse. Then let's call this dish, you say you. What about it? What do you think? Chapter 771. On the other side, Wang Ming was still leading his team to help His Majesty Beast King clear the game. The plot of Detroit cultivation was very complicated, and each choice would affect the subsequent development of the plot. The story of the three main characters intertwined, and the player had to control a total of 3 characters. As one of the three main characters, Connor was just a character in one of the lines. The other two lines revolved around the family's male robot, Marcus, and the female robot, Kara. Sure enough, everything is as Little Silver thought. Beast King deliberately chose some strange answers to make the plot develop in a bad direction. He never intended to win from the beginning. After clearing the first part of the plot, Audra let out a sigh. It was very clear that if they were going to help Beast King clear the game, they absolutely couldn't use normal methods. The second part revolved around the family robot Kara and its male owner, Todd, as well as Todd's little girl, Alice. In the plot, because of the appearance of the intelligent android, Todd lost his original job, and because of this, Todd's wife left him. As a result, Todd became addicted to alcohol, abandoned himself to despair, and even started to take a new type of cheap drug, becoming abnormally irritable. Before the story began, Todd had gone to the Membrane Control Life store to pick up the bionic robot Kara, because 2 weeks ago, Todd had blown Kara up with his fists after taking drugs and had gone berserk. How do we clear this part of the plot? Should I continue to cross-dress? Fatty Luo asked. He didn't know why, but Fatty Luo seemed to be looking forward to cross-dressing now. Little Silver was so frightened that he trembled. No. He had been so frightened by Fatty Luo's cross-dressing appearance earlier that it was really too painful to look at. It was even more painful than Kushuan cross-dressing. At the very least, Kushuan cross-dressing was pretty bearable. Fatty Luo couldn't do it at all. The proof was that he was a silver sect master on the fan rankings. Kushuan cross-dressing was so cute. This ID was so honest. I just downloaded and analyzed the entire plot of the game from the internet. The main point of the plot is that Todd will abuse the little girl after taking drugs. Kara disobeyed Todd's order to not touch and resolutely went to protect Todd's daughter, Alice. In the end, he resisted and escaped from Todd's house with Alice. Wang Ming said, the main point of this plot is that both of them have to get out alive. At the same time, they have to be careful not to kill Todd in the process of resisting, otherwise public opinion of the android in the game's plot will drop, and the final outcome won't be too good. Then what should we do? Little Silver asked. That's easy, Wang Ming said. When resisting domestic violence, Kara can choose to kill Todd with a weapon. Little Silver, if it was His Majesty Beast King, he would definitely choose this, Wang Ming chuckled. So I replaced the weapon in this plot with one that had almost no lethality. To put it bluntly, as long as they could trap the NPC Todd, but not kill him, they would be able to kill him. After that, let Kara escape with the little girl, and the plot will develop towards a good ending. What's the replacement weapon? Unbreakable Love 7 Heavens Lock. It's a magical treasure that can trap people firmly after use. It can trap people but won't kill them. It's elegant but doesn't lose its charm. Because Wang Ming had relied on technical means to hack into Beast King's game world, Beast King himself hadn't been aware of their infiltration. But as these magically altered plots continued to appear, Little Silver was very worried that Beast King would eventually sense it. Beast King initially thought that these changes in the plot were related to the game's latest update, but the more the plot developed, the more he felt that there seemed to be a lot of unreasonable parts in the entire plot. There was no way the previous plot could jump so far. Thus, when it came to the third plot about the last of the three game protagonists, Marcus, Beast King finally realized the problem. He deliberately didn't trigger the next mission, and instead manipulated the Marcus character to stare at the air next to him. Beast King's intuition allowed him to almost immediately detect where Wang Ming and the others were. I know you're next to me. Since you're here, then come out. There's no need to hide anymore. Beast King's voice was very low, but it carried enormous mental pressure as it pressed down on Wang Ming and the others. So strong. Little Silver exclaimed. I'll hold them off. To everyone's surprise, Audra actually took the lead and stood at the very front. You can't hold on with your realm, can you? It has nothing to do with realm. Audra shook his head. I have long johns. Everyone looked as if they were suddenly enlightened. as if they were used to this. Wang Ming sighed deeply. It looked like this odd Zhua, as the disciple of his stupid Ududu, was indeed his true love. There was no one else who would actually wear long johns all the time. But with regards to the long johns and long johns, this incident had indeed taught Wang Ming a lesson. The next time he went out for an activity, he felt that it would be more reliable to wear them, otherwise, he wouldn't have been so embarrassed when he encountered danger like this. Since Beast King had already sensed them, Wang Ming and the others didn't intend to continue hiding, and directly revealed themselves. Enormous mental pressure poured down on everyone, like a huge wave swept up by Typhoon Mangosteen. Everyone felt the pressure on their shoulders, and even rolling their eyelids felt extremely strenuous. But after Odd Zhua took the lead and stood at the front, a lot of this pressure was instantly lifted. Beast King stared at Odd Zhua in indescribable amazement. This young man was clearly only at the Golden Core stage, but he could single-handedly share the mental pressure in the game world. No, this definitely wasn't the young man's own strength. Beast King had already sensed that something wasn't right, and he manipulated his character, Marcus. The next moment, his eyes turned the color of flowing gold, and his pupils gave off a holy brilliance as white as jade. Holy King Eye. This was the second time Little Silver had seen Beast King's Holy King Eye. The first time had been at the Holy Beast Festival, which was held every 100 years as a child. Little Master. Be careful. Little Silver warned Odd Zhua. In the next instant, Beast King's hand was already reaching for Odd Zhua. Chapter 772. There was no need to doubt the strength of Beast King's palm. This grab was just a test, and Odd Zhua stood at the very front, doing his best to withstand the powerful wind pressure caused by the falling palm. The result was as expected. Just as Beast King's palm was about to reach Odd Zhua, a golden light was released from the long johns Odd Zhua was wearing and repelled Beast King's palm. The sacred Beast King frowned and looked at his palm. This golden light made his hand go numb, and it hurt like chili oil had been smeared on his palm. Although it wasn't sharp, it was very persistent, as if it was a warning to him that it was best not to try to get any closer. That was right, this was the aura of heavenly Tao. Beast King narrowed his eyes and didn't choose to attack again. Instead, he looked deeply at Odd Zhua in front of him. Who are you? At the same time, he also noticed Little Silver in the crowd. Although Little Silver was still in human form, Beast King was confident that he couldn't be wrong about the strong aura of holy beast blood that Little Silver gave off. There was actually still a living holy beast. Devil King's face was cloudy, and it was impossible to tell whether it was sad or happy. We're very sorry to interrupt your Majesty's game, but the purpose of our trip is to have a good talk with your Majesty, Wang Ming said. There's nothing to talk about. If there's nothing else, please leave. Don't disturb my game, Devil King directly refused. It looks like your Majesty is worried about something, Wang Ming said again. Devil King turned his head and raised his eyelids at Wang Ming with great interest. He could see that this was just a human who didn't have the slightest hint of spirit energy on him, but he could guess what the other party was thinking. You can read minds? Devil King was skeptical. Wang Ming smiled. Of course. He thought that this was simply nonsense. Now that they had snuck into Beast King's game world, it was equivalent to invading his mind, so Wang Ming could use his mind to explore some of Beast King's shallow memories. After the holy beasts were exterminated, Devil King had gone into seclusion for 1,000 years, and had no idea that the combination of cultivation and science in the outside world had already reached such an unfathomable level. But this was Wang Ming. A scientific cultivation magic artifact made by an average person might not be as practical as Wang Ming's. Devil King's interest in Wang Ming was piqued, and he seemed to have become a little more patient. Then, what do you want to know? Lord Beast King knows very well what we want to know. Wang Ming quickly replied, looking at His Majesty Beast King's expression, you should already be aware that there is still a surviving holy beast in our ranks. Doesn't His Majesty Beast King have something to say? I didn't expect that there would be a holy beast that survived the calamity back then. I remember that the silver-horned beast clan was the last clan to go extinct. To think that their descendants still exist. This year, someone has finally offered incense to the graves of the silver-horned beasts. Little Silver, however, at the mention of what happened back then, the Devil King's expression became a little ugly. I know you want to ask about the specific reason behind the extinction of the holy beasts back then. However, no matter who acted, they couldn't do anything about it. Our holy beast race was destined to face this calamity. It was unavoidable. Sure enough, it wasn't as simple as he had imagined. Hearing Devil King's words, everyone in the field pondered in their hearts. In the outside world, the official conclusion was that President Bai had instigated rumors back then, falsely claiming that the blood and hearts of holy beasts had a powerful nourishing effect and could help cultivators comprehend the power of heavenly Tao. Thus, holy beasts had been hunted and killed on a large scale back then. President Bai had also taken advantage of the chaos to achieve his goal, which was to create the Wuji umbrella, this powerful spatial magic artifact. Listening to the Devil King's tone, he had probably known long ago that the holy beast race would be wiped out, but perhaps for some reason, he hadn't been able to do anything to stop it. That was why he had shut himself in this game. Wang Ming guessed that Qin Lang only knew a little about this matter. There was another reason why Devil King had shut himself in this game, and it wasn't simply because he was autistic or because he didn't want to come out. You can't defy fate. Defying heavenly Tao will never end well. After a long while, the Devil King heaved a long sigh. All along, His Majesty Beast King has been thinking of a solution on his own. If you share your worries with us, it might not necessarily end badly, Wang Ming comforted him. You can't defy fate, and even more so heavenly Tao. Wang Ling had told him about this a long time ago. Although he hadn't truly come into contact with heavenly Tao, Wang Ming actually didn't know any less about it than a real cultivator. It was true that heavenly Tao was terrifying. But, he had Wang Ling. Devil King glanced at Wang Ming, then stared at the sky with the Holy King Eye, where a crack had actually appeared out of thin air. A 5-colored glass box slowly spat out from the crack. This is... Wang Ming frowned. Wang Lingwan was telling him that this box was very dangerous. Heavenly Tao Treasure Box. Devil King said, back then, it was the Almighty Senior who gave me the box that told me that the holy beast race was bound to be wiped out. Someone look for His Majesty Beast King. That's right. Devil King nodded. That senior was extremely powerful. He and I weren't in the same dimension at all. Everyone was stupefied at these words. Not in the same dimension at all, the strongest realm in the outside world now was 9th level True Immortal. Above that was Venerated Immortal. Beast King's strength was equivalent to that of a Venerated Immortal. If the person who had given Beast King the Heavenly Tao treasure box was even more powerful, it seemed that this person was indeed an expert. But Devil King was a little speechless at the reactions of Wang Ming and the others. This bunch of people were clearly weaklings, but after hearing his story, they actually didn't react at all. That was a super expert who far surpassed Venerated Immortals. I said that this person's strength wasn't in the same dimension as mine, aren't you surprised? This time, Devil King was truly alarmed. Had he run into a bunch of fools? Oh, Wang Ming and the others nodded cooperatively, their faces unruffled. If it's really as His Majesty Beast King says, then it's really shocking. Very scary. Devil King, after all, everyone here had witnessed Wang Ling's extraordinary abilities. So when Devil King told them about the Almighty's past, they were already as calm as usual. Devil King rubbed his head, feeling a headache coming on. Back then, that senior told me that the extinction of the holy beasts was inevitable and unchangeable. The only thing that could be done was to salvage the situation. He gave me the Heavenly Tao treasure box and told me that as long as I could unlock its secret, there was still a chance that the holy beast race would be reborn after it was wiped out. I've been immersed in this game all these years precisely because I was following the senior's knowledge and looking for the password to unlock the treasure box. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.